Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody today, August 10th, for this regular meeting for the Corporation Township of Plessunch. I will start with roll call. Councillor Goyda.
Present.
Councillor Spoulos.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
And Councillor Balmer.
Here.
All right, now we'll start our moment of reflection. All right, that completes our moment of reflection. Ms. White Fox, do you have a resolution for the confirmation of the agenda, please?
The council approves the August 10th, 2022 agenda as circulated, and the council approves the addition to the agenda as follows. Consent item 6.1.3, questions received from council seeking additional information and the corresponding responses provided by staff.
Thank you. Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spoulos, seconded by Councillor Balmer. Any questions or comments on that? All in favor, Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
Councillor Spoulos.
In favor.
Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
And Councillor Balmer.
In favor.
Excellent. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest today? See none. All right. Consent agenda resolution, please.
That the consent agenda items listed for the August 10th, 2022 council meeting be received for information.
You're gonna move for that, please. Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Spoulos. Any items to be removed? Councillor Goyda.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Spoulos.
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bailey.
None for me.
And Councillor Balmer.
Just a brief discussion on 6.17 regarding from the Sheepdog Association.
Okay,
Thank you.
and anything further? Sorry, I cut you off there. I'd like to pull out the minutes 6.11 so that maybe Mr. CAO could give us an update on the actions or inactions of CBM on concession 2 as council requested from last meeting, which was the flagmen, you know, potential paving the approaches and stuff like that. So those 2 items, I believe, only. Ms. White Fox.
I've noted those as exceptions in the current motion to be,
Okay.
so the rest could be received.
Thank you. So all in favor, Councillor Goyda,
Favor.
Councillor Spoulos,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
and Councillor Balmer.
In favor.
All right, do you want to go first, Councillor Balmer?
Yes, this is brief. I'm not looking for any action on this item, other than to request council support to have this correspondence placed in the file with our kennel bylaw and or our dog licensing bylaw, so that when those come up for renewal, this information can be considered at that time. Since we just updated the kennel bylaw, I'm not interested in reopening it at this time, but it'd be nice to have it there for staff or council's awareness next time it comes up for consideration.
All right, Ms. White Fox, do we need a resolution to direct that to happen, or can we just take that?
I do have it just to both receive that item, and then I've made note of the to file that with the ongoing bylaw file.
All right, any concerns from members of council on that direction? Not seen any. Okay, so we'll receive that with staff direction. Okay, move for that, please. Councillor Bailey, you're moving it?
Yep.
Seconded by Councillor Balmer.
Yes.
Sure, all in favor. Councillor Goyda,
In favor.
Spoulos,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
and Councillor Balmer.
In favor.
All right, yeah, Mr. CAO, do you have an update on the situation down in concession 2?
Sure, I can give you an update. We did send correspondence to CBM with regards to council's decision at the last meeting, gave a copy of that resolution. We did receive correspondence back from them, and short version is it essentially dismissed a bunch of the concerns and said that things are fine. They have a traffic report saying that things are fine. So we have subsequently followed up and asked for a copy of that traffic report to see what their basis was for determining things are fine. And they did agree to still discuss updates or upgrades to the crossing, paving approaches and things like that. But as we discussed at the last meeting, that's kind of on hold until because we still feel that the crossing isn't necessary, that a conveyor or auger should be used. So we're still working through that aspect of it. And their response is also being reviewed by our safety consultant. And then we're preparing something that will be sent back, and we're also looking at some additional steps we might be taking.
Do you have any advice as to whether we should be taking this to another level? So here's where I kind of felt the upgrading to the approaches should land. To me, that was an immediate action, regardless if the conveyor is implemented, because they're tracking all the dirt and debris onto the road. And either way, if the conveyor gets approved or implemented or not, those aprons need to be upgraded as soon as possible, not only when there's a decision on whether the conveyor will be implemented. Does that make sense? So I feel that we should be pressuring them to get those improvements, paving, to keep the material off the road. I do believe they have been washing the road a little bit more frequently. Is that a fair statement?
I don't have information on that, sorry, but I know we haven't had very much wet weather at all that's going to be tracking a lot of the mud and slime out onto the road that has been in previous years. So I don't have enough information to answer that for you right now.
So what's your position on the idea that they do these improvements immediately while we work through this conveyor issue? Because unfortunately, this whole concern has dragged on for a very long time, and inaction is no longer acceptable as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. That's why we're having this aspect of the safety issue reviewed. The concern is that if we proceed and authorize the paving of aprons and things like that, or concreting of aprons, then that's going to be accepting as be viewed as the municipality is accepting as a final solution, as opposed to other methods that should be in place. So that's part of the assessment that's being undertaken, is should we be insisting on the aprons being done right now, or should they enhance the daily maintenance and cleaning of the roadway, those types of things. So we hope to have some additional information within the next few days about that.
So should we be then asking the MNR, because my memory recalls that we have already asked MNR for an interpretation on their operation plans, right? And that site note, and we haven't received that. So maybe is it time to elevate this to our MPP and identify the importance of getting a decision on that expediently?
Yeah, we're like I said, we're getting further assessment done by our safety consultant, as well as a couple of other options to bring forward. And part of that very well might be sending additional correspondence, and then we could easily include our MPP as well to try and get some attention to these concerns, for sure.
So I'm kind of hearing two sides there. It sounds like you're waiting on some safety reports from some consultants, but I kind of view them as two different items. Like, we still need to know what the MNR, the regulating body, ruling is on that site plan note, do we not?
Yes, we do, and we are still working on that aspect of it too.
When's the last time you had any dialogue with MNR on that specific item?
Ms. Whitefox, can you remind me of that? I don't recall offhand.
So we have been going back and forth We haven't gotten an answer, but we did follow up and had a response from the MNRF just this week that they're still looking into it.
They're still looking into it. Okay. All right, well, Councillor Spillis.
Yes, like school's gonna start in a few weeks, and I really don't want this to drag on with the school buses running up and down that road, especially with September's likely gonna start raining again and the road's gonna get slippery. I really like to flag this up to our MPP and say this issue is brewing, specifically the concern of safety and the fact that we need the pit operator to provide the movement of soil under the roadway. So my suggestion is that we forward this motion. I think we already did to no, we didn't forward. No, so I think we should forward the motion to our MPP and ask for a resolution, given the fact that this has been going on for an extraordinary long time. You may recall several months ago, there was a ERO whereby this pit operator wanted to expand the operations at its pit, and we put similar comments into the ministry at that time and specifically mentioned school bus operation. Well, it's coming up back again, school bus operation, and I really am concerned for the kids and kids on the bus.
Okay, I'll take that as a move. Can we get a seconder so we can discuss that quick? Councillor Goyda, thank you. Ms. Whitefox, would you need more clarification on what to include on the letter to MPP, or I guess it's Mr. Speaker now?
What I'm hearing is that it's the previous resolution just to be forwarded on, and maybe to just add a covering email, just letting them know that this has been going on for some time and we're looking for some assistance.
Yeah, I'd like to cover letter, either signed by both myself and Mr. CAO or the appropriate staff member, highlighting what Councillor Sapoulis mentioned, that we mentioned these concerns and list the ERO posting, as well as that the school, it's a great catch, Councillor Sapoulis, that school is going to be resuming and that we need action on this quickly as possible, and ask them to reference the attached resolution. And hopefully Mr. Speaker can forward that on to the new Minister of Natural Resources. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Spillis?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, and who seconded that? And Councillor Goyda?
Yeah.
All right, conversation, Councillor Goyda.
Yeah, I would support that 100%. I do have, and maybe I should wait until maybe you just want to do this first. And I do have a question about the flagmen. So I don't know if you want me to do that separately after this motion.
Give her.
I just want to clarify. So as of right now, there are no flagmen at the crossing.
That's correct.
Correct? Is there, and it sounds like perhaps there's not really any intention of implementing that anytime soon. Is there a mechanism that we could supply the flagmen and ask for cost recovery on that? Just, I mean, not as a permanent measure in any means, but just as a temporary measure, especially given what Councillor Sapoulis has just alerted us about the school buses. I would not believe that a conveyor could be built in that short of a time. So in the interim, could we not do something to get the flagmen in there in the interim?
I'll just let him answer that real quick, Councillor Spillis, then I'm going to likely put a pause on that one and finish our.
Sure.
Yeah, the flagman is for the operator to be responsible for truck movement across the road, not for stopping our traffic along concession 2. So if we have our own flagmen there telling their trucks to do and something happens, we're held liable. It's up to them to make sure that their trucks cross the road safely and do not affect our traffic.
Mr. CEO, did you want to touch on that quick, and then we'll get back to that motion on the table?
That's the same response I was going to give.
Okay.
Councillor Sapoulis just
Okay,
provided.
I misunderstood. I thought that the flagmen were to stop or to alert the traffic on our road, so that's fine.
One further comment that I'll just add in regards to that is I'm also in the midst of discussions with the OPP in terms of safety enforcement and Highway Traffic Act implications along this section too. So that's still in process. I don't have anything I can update you on right now, but that's in process.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. Okay. Councillor Spillis, did you want to say more comments before I go on to Councillor Bailey?
No, I'm fine. I've said my spiel.
Councillor Bailey?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm in agreement of the motion that's forward. It's disappointing that there hasn't been any action taken. I had assumed there was going to be a temporary flagman measure until things got organized. So I think this is the way to go. It's just another push. Let's push and stay on track with what we were asking for originally.
Thank you. Councillor Balmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fully support the intent of the motion and what we're trying to achieve. My concern is there's jurisdictional issues here that we need to acknowledge as well. The Ministry of Natural Resources is responsible for enforcing the site plans in the licensed area. The road crossing is not part of that licensed area, so the Area Resources Act does not apply. If we believe there's a problem on the road and we have a consultant that has identified a problem on the road, it's our liability. And we have all the authority we need to deal with it outside of the license boundary. Section 66 does not affect us out there. My concern is just the same as Councillor Sapoulis. We're aware of traffic concerns. We're concerned about the school buses coming back on the road. There's nothing that I've heard that would prevent us from doing something. And if we don't do something now, I feel like we're the ones that are liable. And the motion seems to be asking the Ministry of Natural Resources to do something, but it's not the Ministry of Natural Resources road. It's our road. And I just feel that if I have a concern about safety on my road, I have an obligation to do something about it. And I don't know if that's properly reflected in what we're doing here, but if this is a start, but I don't want to leave it to the Ministry of Natural Resources to solve a problem that's been identified on our property.
Well, we're trying to be good partners in the aggregate industry. We've identified a concern. We're giving the operator some time, even though we're now aware of a liability. My understanding was when we said, do the aprons, do the flagman, that will reduce our liability until the ministry, who has a jurisdiction over the site plan, makes a determination on that site note, which is driving this whole mess. Because I am supportive of the interpretation that it shall go under the road, but until the regulating body makes a determination on that, we're just going to keep pointing fingers at each other, and no action is going to happen. So, us as a good partner in the aggregate industry is giving CBM some time. Then we had the hopes that they would implement some good faith measures of paving the aprons, putting the flagman in place to reduce that liability while we wait on the ministry to make that regulation. So I don't believe I agree with you, Councillor Palmer. I just feel that we're trying to be a good partner and give them a bit of time, but that time is quickly running out. Now, you're mentioning we have the capabilities to deal with mitigating our liability. Did you want to expand on what those opportunities are?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to be fair, you're speaking a lot about what I was thinking in terms of, yes, I agree. We've asked the operator to deal with this. Now that they haven't, and I've heard that staff is waiting. They're still working on it. I heard from staff that they were waiting for some report from the operator that they believe it's not a problem. I guess what I'm suggesting here is that within this cover letter or motion to the ministry, that we state that this cannot go on forever waiting for the ministry. That there will come a time when we will have to take action and we will have to bill somebody. And in my mind, it's going to be the operator. And we're going to need the support of the province, either the ministry or the province, to allow us to recover those costs from the operator. To me, that demonstrates that we're still taking action on our responsibility as the road authority, as opposed to just waiting for the ministry to take action. That's my concern, is I don't think we can put it fully on the ministry regarding the road issues. We have to demonstrate that we're taking action on them too.
Mr. CAO, in that cover letter, would you be able to pen up a component of it that describes our ability to mitigate the crossing of those trucks and then also reduce the liability that the township's incurring? I'm sure that you're able to word something along those lines.
Yes, we can.
I think that's important as well. Councillor Spools?
We should reflect by going back to the motion. We basically said is, whereas the MNRF is the approval regulating body for agri licenses, that the MNRF be responsible and accept all risk associated with the operation it approves, and the township should be not forced to accept risk and liability for the province and private profit corporation. In other words, we've identified there's a problem here. And we're saying, if you ministry are choosing to ignore it, then it's on you, not on us.
I agree. And I think in the cover letter, Mr. CAO could probably word it a little more, I don't want to say layman terms, but just spell it out to them that if you reference our motion, there's a liability concern with the township. It's not, it shall be on the MDNRF. We're not willing to accept that liability. Please reference, I just see some value in having it on the cover letter. If a ministry receives plenty of resolutions, probably weekly or daily, and this cover letter might trigger them to read it thoroughly. I'm not implying they don't read it thoroughly, but I just want more chance that it won't be missed. Mr. CAO, what are your thoughts on that?
Agree, and we will make sure that there's the appropriate wording in there.
Does that make you comfortable, Councillor Spools?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, I'll just go around one more quick time. We have the resolution on the table. I believe there's an understanding of what's going to be sent. Cover letter with highlighting the concerns, asking for actions. Mr. CAO and I will sign it, and then the resolution will be attached to it. I don't know, do we want to send this to CBM as well? That'd probably be appropriate, Mr. Schwindinger.
Sure, yeah, we could CC them on that too.
I just want to be transparent with them. I'm wanting them to know we're taking action. So, okay, last time going around, any other additional comments, Councillor Guida?
Oh, that sounds good.
Councillor Spools?
I'm good, thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, nothing further.
And Councillor Bulmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I understand. I guess if I had one final comment, it would be that the resolution speaks to how we would like it to be. My concern is that's not how it actually is in the meantime, until the laws are changed for the ministry to be responsible for these decisions. We remain responsible, and I'm just looking for something to be put in there that suggests what actions we will take to mitigate the liability as it exists today. The report that we received before did suggest there was opportunities to close accesses. As Councillor Goyda said, I know the CAO was not supportive of putting flagmen in and then billing them, but that's my outstanding concern, is that it doesn't specify what action we will do, even to our own residents. Now that we've identified this concern, what actions will we take if everybody else does nothing? And perhaps that's for another day and not this letter. So I will stand down and get out of the way. Thank you.
I don't know, Mr. CAO, I'm comfortable with putting in that, we have the ability to close the access to our right of ways, but I'm a bit of a hard nail. So I'm just, what are your thoughts? Should we say that for another day or put something in there? I don't want to put in the flagman because I don't want to start incurring costs that we might not recover. And then, as Councillor Spools mentioned, that could put us in more liability as well. So.
Yeah, I don't think that that's something that we could maybe suggest that we may need to take further action, but I don't want to indicate in the letter what we might do because we're still evaluating those options and getting advice from OPP and others, right? So we'll, I think it's best to say that we may be forced to take some additional actions, but not necessarily specify what they are.
Councillor Swift, saw your finger up there for a second.
Yes, the comment I wanted to make is our CEO is coming forward with a report, and presumably, Mr. CEO, you will have recommendations on what you recommend to do to maintain the safety of the road, given whatever information you garner from the various authorities.
Yes, that's correct.
Great, thank you.
Okay. All right, all in favor. Councillor Goyda,
In favor.
Councillor Swills,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
and Councillor Bomer.
In favor.
Excellent. All right. Delegations none, public meetings none, reports. First report, Ms. Hassan, 9.2.1.
Good morning, Council. So we received another financial incentive application under the Township's Community Improvement Plan. We worked collaboratively with Township staff, so the Building Department, the Planning Department, and the Heritage Committee, and the County of Wellington for this application. And so the recommendation here is to enter into a financial assistance agreement because the application is in accordance with the Community Improvement Plan eligibility requirements. I'd welcome any of Council's questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hassan. Just for Council's information, this location is the old LCBO agency that left Morriston. So I was a little concerned that may sit vacant for many years, but I'm glad to see that something's come a tenant there. Councillor Goyda.
Yeah, I don't really have any questions. I agree. I'm glad to see that there's a new business going in that location and that they're able to take advantage of this community improvement plan. And I look forward to visiting them when they open. So I would support this 100%.
Councillor Spillis.
Yes, I support this 100%. It's glad to see revitalization of Morriston slowly taking shape.
Excellent. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also, I think this is great, and it's nice to see businesses coming into our villages. One thing I just wondered for any future reports is if there'd be opportunity to put a conceptual drawing or something on it. There's a few proposed, facade type things, but it would just be nice to see what the concept is that they're proposing to do.
Yeah, they did attach those photos from, I don't know when it was, the late 1800s or something. I guess that was the idea, to try to show what the concept, but I was looking as well, trying to get a grasp on it, but it's definitely difficult. But Councillor Bomer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this went before the Heritage Committee as well, because it is a building that's on the registry, and the committee was very supportive of this application and actually expressed quite an interest in the community improvement plans and the community improvement areas in general. And we're pleased to hear that there was some funding available for people who wanted to spruce up a heritage building or any building. But so staff was kind enough to offer to prepare a report for the Heritage Committee to help them understand how this program works. So we'll have other people in the community aware of it, and maybe encourage other businesses along that corridor to apply, because there are several small businesses that operate in heritage buildings along that corridor who might also be interested in applying for these grants. So good work all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. White Fox, do you have a resolution, please?
At report FIN 2022-027 entitled Community Improvement Plan Execution of Financial Assistance Agreement with Crape Company Inc. and Embers Holding. Incorporated be received and that council give 3 readings to bylaw number 2022-035, being a bylaw authorizing the entering into a financial assistance agreement with Crepe Company and Embers Holding under the Township of West Lynch Community Improvement Plan.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Goida, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All in favor, Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Spoulos,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
Favor.
Councillor Balmer.
In favor.
I need 30 seconds. I got a kid at the door. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry about that. 9.3.1. This is Ms. Whitebot, I believe, Foster's Lake Access.
Yes, thank you. So this report is an update from staff, just to provide council some information on the ongoing challenges that staff are encountering at the Puslin Lake Access at Traveled Road. So the report outlines some of the steps that staff have taken over the last year or so, just with getting some survey work done and getting some signage placed at the location, just indicating that the where the public lake access is. And then just the report also just gives some detail about the cost of the work that has been done and just the unfortunate events that took place earlier this month, just with the signage being removed from the location. And at this time, staff are looking for some guidance from council just as to whether different monuments could be placed in that area, different things to hopefully mitigate some of the concerns with the residents that live down there and the public that are attending it. So the report does outline that we're looking to put up some signage in the area for the fire route, just to help with some of the parking that's taking place down there. And then just again, with the different type of monuments that have been suggested by the surveyor as well. So staff are available to kind of answer any questions, and we're looking for some direction from council out of this report.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Whitebox. My understanding, the next style of monument is going to be like a little concrete thing with rebar in it and be quite difficult for them to remove.
So it is something that's used in public locations, from what the surveyor has told us. So it would be about I think we have it in the report. It can either be a 6x6 or a 4x4 cement post or pillar that kind of has the pointed top on it. You may have seen them in other locations. You can mount plaques to it. You could mount a sign to it, and they are cemented into the ground. So they are very permanent.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Goida?
Thanks. Yeah, obviously this is really disappointing to have read this. I agree with the recommendations in the report with the monuments and the parking. I think it's unfortunate that the residents who object to the public lake access would go to this extent and these measures to deter people rather than simply, engaging with staff, engaging with council to relay those specific concerns and work collaboratively with us to find a solution. But either way, I think that limiting the access to the foot traffic and upgrading the posts are reasonable measures to take for now. I do think, though, that it's definitely not an ideal way to access the lake, given there's really nowhere to park anywhere nearby for people to then be able to walk in. And I mean, there's obviously a demand for access to the lake. So I guess I'm curious to know if staff are aware if there has ever been any sort of formal discussions with the GRCA regarding any possibility of accessing the lake through their property, and if not, what would it take to get that conversation going?
Ms. Whitebox?
So I do believe there was conversation with the GRCA because they do own a large parcel of land that has frontage on the lake just on the west side. I don't know exactly what the outcome was, but I believe it had taken place a number of years ago. That's not to say it's a conversation that couldn't happen again.
May
Yeah.
I interject there?
Yeah.
Councillor Goyda? What are your thoughts on requesting GRCA to present to Puslinch Council with obviously with the presentation that delineates the property? I'm not familiar how large the parcel is, and then to come speak to us about the makeup of the soil condition. I've heard different rumors that it's all swampland. That's why GRCA doesn't want to put access in there. It's just prohibitively expensive. But these are all things that we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
So maybe we ask GRCA to come with a map, show us what you own, if there is potential for access, or this is the only place for access. Here's what it's going to be. It's going to be a 3-kilometer long boardwalk at $1 million. I think we need to hear these answers, because then we might have the opportunity to close this road allowance and convey the property to the adjacent landowners and get rid of that problem if we create an access somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I think that would be worth the discussion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, given the amount of feedback from residents regarding the desire to access the lake and the inability for us to be able to really adequately provide that with what we have now, I think it's worth having that discussion, that meeting, that expressing that desire to do that. And if it doesn't work, well, then at least we know it doesn't work. But right now, we don't really know that. We're just kind of, we don't know. We don't know what it would cost. We don't know if it's possible. We don't even know what they even have. So I think it would be a good idea to have that discussion, whether it's they come to our council or what it might be, but that we can express, what it is that we're looking for and what they may or may not be able to assist us to achieve.
Yeah, and I just want to confirm, Mr. Schwendlinger, because this is a public right-of-way, it's not that we don't have to provide access, but we can't prevent it. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yes, that's correct.
So, okay. Councillor Sapoulis.
Yes, as Councillor Goyda, I'm also very disappointed with the residents in that area. So I have 3 points to make. First point I'd like to suggest is that we take the costs that we're incurring as a result of the damage and put the bill to the association. Say, your people caused this. Here it is. Please pay up. That's number one. Following up on Councillor Goyda's comments on getting the GRCA, I'm suggesting putting 2 other irons in the fire. One is with the Puslinch Lake Conservation Association. We've given them over $300,000 in the last, I guess, since 2009, and I think we gave the grant to clean up the lake, and cleaning up the lake is not only for the residents around Puslinch, it's also for the rest of our residents. So my suggestion is to ask them to come to help us assist in providing a better access to Puslinch Lake. They may have ways and means that we're not aware of, type of thing. So that's number one. The second iron of fire is McClintock. Talk to them, see if there's a way that they could allow access to their property. If we have to pay money, what would it be, type of thing, parking, access to a small section of beach, something that would work for them and would work for us, type of thing. I don't know if that's possible. I know they shut down access to it, but if we come up with some sort of agreement that works for both of us, perhaps that's another option. So those are my 3 points, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sapoulis. I'll come back. I'll circle back to them after I go around the table. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Yeah, I tend to agree that the access should be only open to the pedestrian traffic. It seems obvious with all the concerns down there and how tight the space is. I just am a little concerned with where then people would park. I mean, the carpool park is an 8-minute walk. So are people now going to be, parking at the carpool and walking down a county road with their canoe? I just don't know if that's going to open up some issues, but I think it's kind of the only option we have at this point is catering sort of to any pedestrian traffic. I do have a question about the monuments and putting the posts into the concrete. That's great, but what prevents the signs from being removed at the top of the posts? Is that still a problem?
Potentially, I think we could do our best to affix the signs, but I mean, we had 8-foot posts taken right out of the ground. They were pounded about 4 feet deep. So I don't know, with the exception of maybe placing like a plaque-like sign that's actually affixed to the cement post. I mean, we're also open to vandalism. There could be different things that happen to the posts themselves. So I don't know if there's any real remedy for that, but we can certainly replace the signs and affix them to the cement posts the best we can. I know that we've talked to our sign provider as well, and they can put over like a graffiti film on them as well. So if they do get vandalized, then it can come off a little bit easier. So there's some things we can do to help with it, but if people can be very creative, so I don't think we can think of everything.
So I'm just wondering about, instead of putting in signs that say what not to do, what if we did something like a poured concrete pad and a bench that said welcome, welcome to your view of the lake, where it's just foot traffic can go down, they can sit on a bench. There's nothing to remove. There's no, it's not an unsightly sign and it's more of a positive welcome, maybe is something that I had been thinking of. I'll leave it with you. My last point was along the lines of what's already been mentioned, but it was just asking staff to inquire about other access options. So not narrowing it down just to GRCA, but seeing if there's other potential spots around the lake.
I just want to touch on that one item you spoke of first, the concrete pad. Mr. CAO or Ms. White Fox, I believe what Councillor Bailey means is similar to a sidewalk, but instead of running parallel with the road allowance, it would run perpendicular, so east to west on the road allowance, and then some sort of marking inside it saying public access. And then I like the idea of the bench, because then you can anchor the bench to the pad.
Yeah.
And even have a plaque, property of Puslinch or township of Puslinch, so then clearly identifying just an option to delineate the road access. Mr. CAO, very preliminary, but what are your thoughts on doing something like that so that it can't be vandalized and removed?
Well, I'm not sure there's anything that can't be vandalized and removed. I'll start that way. You can make it more difficult or try and make it a little bit resistant to that. But as Ms. White Fox said, people can be quite creative. Yeah, it's definitely something that we could consider. We will. How about we put together something, because obviously there'd be a cost associated with something like that. We could put together a preliminary estimate and then include that as part of the upcoming budget discussions.
Okay, Councillor Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I support the idea of the new monuments as suggested in the report. And to say I'm disappointed by some of the things I've read in the report would be an understatement, but best to leave it at that. The other recommendation was to put some decorative rocks on the pathway to narrow it down to be, for pedestrian traffic only. Would this be done in such a manner that would still enable snowmobile access in the wintertime though?
That would all be features we'd have to consider when we come up with the design for sure.
Okay, because I wouldn't want to inadvertently, it's a small vehicle that uses the lake as well. And if we have to keep that in mind as we design this.
Yep.
Just if I could just speak a moment to some of the things that been, try not to go on forever here. GRCA. Yeah, I think a third time might be a good idea because things have changed. And I'll go over that briefly. The first time we asked for GRCA to do this, it was back after 2005 sometime, maybe between 2006, 2010, they were doing a land needs assessment. And there was a great deal of interest back then as we were investing money into the dredging, as Councillor Sapoulis mentioned, that this was would be a reasonable thing to achieve public access to balance off that expenditure of public money for the dredging. They didn't complete that. Excuse me. That process completed sometime after 2010, and back during the term 2014 to 2018, just before Councillor Sapoulis was appointed to council, we revisited that with the GRCA, and the answer that came back then was a resounding no. They weren't interested in that. But I think it's important to recognize that things have changed with conservation authorities now. If you recall, we've received a lot of correspondence from the CAs with the province requiring them to restructure how they classify the things they do. And there is now a category of things they do at the request of a municipality, and that they then need to enter into agreements with those municipalities who want something, that those municipalities can choose to ask for something from the Conservation Authority and come up with ways to fund it if necessary. And I think in terms of a public access for the lake, one of our biggest partners would be the city of Cambridge, since I think it'd be easy to understand that a lot of the residents that an access on from Town Line Road down to the lake would serve would be the residents of Cambridge, because there was at one time a servants entrance from Town Line Road down to the lake that the GRCA used themselves to get in and out to maintain their property. So I think that's a great opportunity to explore with the Conservation Authority. We may even want to open up conversations with the city of Cambridge, maybe even the county of Wellington. I mean, we now have this new structure that the province has created to ask for these things in a different way. With regard to asking the residents association to pay for this, understood, but we don't know it was a member of the Bayview Cottages Association. I get phone calls about this road allowance from people not just who live in the township, but outside the township, both in favor and against. I'd love to be able to know who it was and recover those costs. I'm significantly disappointed about that behavior because this council took what I think was a very respectful approach to this whole situation and taking it slowly, recognizing it meant identifying this public road allowance meant change for some people, and to have them respond in such a disrespectful manner really is disappointing. So I understand the desire to seek compensation from them, but since I don't know who it is, I couldn't go down that road. But the other two suggestions I think are really well thought out, and I could support moving ahead on. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bomer. Mr. CAO or Mrs. Sand, could you just discuss about the possibility of cost recovery on this, please? I feel that it's probably not likely possible, but.
I'd suggest it would be, if this is council's desire, we could request, but I'm not sure we could force the association to pay for something like this. And as Councillor Bulmer mentioned, unless we know for sure through charges being laid or whatever is part of investigation as to who performed these acts, then that might be a course of action we could follow. But other than that, I'm not sure what we could do.
Okay. Councillor Sapoulis, can you revisit your two other items, please? Just to refresh the members.
Yeah, the first one is ask the Puslinch Lake Conservation Association to help us find a better access to Puslinch Lake. As I mentioned, we've paid in excess of $300,000 to them through various grants over the years. And the work was to improve Puslinch Lake, not only for the people living around the lake, but also for residents of Puslinch. The second iron of fire I mentioned was a talk to McClintock, the water ski people, see if there's a way that we can enter an agreement with them to provide parking and access to the lake. That's works for both of us.
Yeah, all right, we'll maybe discuss that second component. I believe Councillor Bailey also asked about other access. So staff, I'm sure you hear that we need to reach out to PLCA to see if there's any other access, or through title searches, maybe there's some other problematic areas that we can have access. That was a joke. Let's talk about approaching McClintock's. I like the idea of them providing access. I find it troubling to pay them to provide access to the lake, but we'll see what the conversation goes around the table. Councillor Goyda.
Yeah, I would support. I would support the conversation. I mean, we have no idea. It might just be a straight up no, but you know, some time has passed since they've closed that access, and you know, maybe there's some, you know, maybe they would be willing to work with us on it, but how that would look, what that would look like, I think would be part of the discussion. But I think we would first need to just ask if there's even any interest. So I think just starting that way would be the route to go. And definitely I would support asking the PLCA to work with us as well on potentially finding, maybe there's opportunities that we're not aware of. So maybe they could help us find something, or maybe they could help us work with the GRCA or any other group or person that might be able to help us provide access.
Councillor Spillis, would you be fine with approaching the McClintocks through the PLCA as a whole? So we do have a representative here, Councillor Bailey. She could take that away and work on that portfolio while we wait to hear back from GRCA.
Certainly, we can roll it into the one iron of fire and ask the PLC to look at options, including speaking to McClintock. That's an option. I don't know how the CEO would feel about that option. Would he rather prefer dealing with them directly or through the PLCA? That's a question, Mr. CEO. Would you comment, please?
I believe if that's going to be a solution, like McClintock's is a solution that council would be interested in, there need to be some type of agreement entered into, or leasing arrangement, or some type of formal type of documentation. So it would be better if those discussions were with the municipality and McClintock's themselves. But what we could indicate in the letter to the Lake Association is that we're going to be approaching them, the McClintocks, as well, so that they know too. I think we could just, so that everyone's on the same page.
That works. Okay. Who was that? Was that Councillor Spillis?
Yes. No, I'm fine with the approach our CEO's suggesting. Yes.
Okay. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, which component? Yeah, in terms of the McClintock conversation, I think if maybe staff could approach, you know, with the idea of like a boat slip or a couple parking spaces that are, you know, reserved, and you know, who knows if there's needs to be cost related to there, but I think there might be a little potential as long as it's not too invasive, you know, and if it's through a booking system or something, I can see that conversation maybe going well. I did send the there's a new president of the Puslinch Lake Conservation Association, Brian, and I did send him this report last night, so they are going to be aware of what's on it, and we do have a meeting tonight, so I'm also happy to go and see if we can, you know, at least draw attention to this and start the conversation through the PLCA.
Okay, Councillor Bowman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to make sure that whenever we're talking about the boat launch, the existing boat launch at McClintock's, that we talk about it with a fair bit of gratitude and respect, because they have for a long time allowed free access and use of that boat launch for people with canoes or small crafts and things. On behalf of, they didn't have to. And it's their property to do with as they wish. So I want to make sure we all keep that in mind, that they had a situation they felt they had to deal with, and respect the fact that it's their private property. So that when we open the conversation, they recognize that we do appreciate the service they've provided the community over those years, especially at this time. The restaurant just burned down. The building was owned by Mr. McClintock as well. So keep that in mind as we talk about that location. But yeah, I would support opening the conversations to see if there is something that we bring to the table that could help Mr. McClintock see his way clear to making that access available again. And by the way, he makes it available not just for the summertime, but ice fisher. People can go for ice fishing there, and he doesn't charge them for that access either in the past. So these are important things to keep in mind when we start those conversations, so it doesn't look like we're asking for something for nothing or trying to take something away, but we're trying to bring something to what they already have so that the entire community can benefit. Thanks.
Okay, Ms. White Fox, what have you heard from council that the direction?
So the first was that council would like a report back regarding design options and cost estimates for the pedestrian access at the traveled road public lake access, including the installation of the concrete survey monuments. The second was that staff be directed to contact the GRCA to explore public lake access from the GRCA lands with frontage on Puslinch Lake. The third was whereas Puslinch Lake Conservation Association receives grant funding from the townships to dredge the lake for the benefit of the community, that they be requested by staff to assist in establishing a public access to the lake. And then finally, the last was whereas McClintock's had previously provided lake access for watercraft for the public on their lands that have now been closed, that staff inquire with the McClintock's if they're open to entering into an agreement with the township to reestablish public lake access from their lands.
I'm not sure, do we need to have entering into an agreement with the township? That would already insinuate that we're going to pay. My thing in the past, the user paid, so you could come and launch your boat for $10 or something along those lines. What we're really asking for is McClintock to open up their boat launch on a user fee schedule, and then staff can have the discussions about whether McClintock's is willing to offer a discount to Puslinch residents or only open it to user fee paid to Puslinch residents. And these are the things that I'm cautious about already throwing out there, that, to enter into agreement with the township. Mr. or Councillor Schools?
I think you have to, as Council Boomer pointed out, it's private property. They're the owner of that property, and for us not to come to the table with anything, I think would be very disingenuous on our part. Even though they provided this in the past, things have changed. There's a new breed of users out there, and we have to have an agreement that works for both of us. It can't be perceived as we take and we don't give anything in return.
All right. Okay. Everybody's heard what Ms. White Fox said. Councillor Goya, any quick comments?
Yes. Yeah, I support all those comments. I just want to make sure in that first part, I don't have that wording memorized that you said, but Councillor Bailey had brought up a good idea of potentially using benches as opposed to posts. Is it interpreted that would be included as part of that design component?
So maybe
Or
what
cost.
I could do, Councillor Gordon, maybe what I could do is just remove the including the installation of certain for survey monuments and just leave it open-ended with design options, so that it doesn't specifically direct staff to start with those concrete monuments. We'll just look at options, including the bench and that, and bring them back.
Yeah,
Mm.
okay. And then the other thing is that Councillor Balmer brought up a really good idea, is to potentially connect with the city of Cambridge and possibly even the county to collaborate on working with Grand River Conservation. I think that's an excellent idea, as residents from all those areas would benefit. Is there a way to incorporate that in part of the resolution for the Grand River Conservation?
So I can amend it to say that staff be directed to contact the GRCA, City of Cambridge, and the County of Wellington to explore a public lake access from the GRCA lands with frontage on Puss Lake.
I would be okay with that.
Councillor Spoulos,
I'm good with all that, as amended by Councillor Cueto.
Councillor Bailey,
Yeah, I'm happy with those amendments, leaving the beginning part of it open-ended and doing a big, more of a group team collaborative discussion focus. I like that idea as well.
Councillor Balmer,
Yeah, I just to help facilitate addressing your concern about the agreement and Councillor Sapoulis's wise words, perhaps it could be changed to suggest that, and the township would be willing to enter into an agreement with Mr. McClintock if it would to help address any concerns that he has, as opposed to your concern is we're coming to him with a piece of paper here, it's signed or take it or leave it. It's that it's something we'd be willing to do if it would help address his concerns. Does that address your concern?
it does, and I was fine with leaving it as is because I've
Okay.
not seen any numbers. If you know, the
Okay.
agreement turns out to be very expensive, then I won't support it. But if it's something that's reasonable, which it could be, I don't know. So it wasn't worth to me to dig my heels in until I see what the proposal is. So if,
Understood.
If staff want to take that feedback from Councillor Bulmer and change it to willing, I'll leave it in their hands. But yeah, until we see any recommendations, I'm comfortable for now.
Okay, I'm fine with it too as it is. So
Okay.
okay,
Thank you, Councillor Bulmer. I appreciate that. I think I'm last, right? So Ms. White Fox, just one last time, and I'll get a mover and a seconder on it, just so everybody's comfortable with what you've recorded, please.
That report ADM 2022-045 entitled Puss Lake Access be received, and that council directs staff to report back regarding design options and cost estimates for pedestrian access at the public lake access on traveled road, and that staff be directed to contact the GRCA, City of Cambridge, and the County of Wellington to explore a public lake access from the GRCA lands with frontage on Puss Lake. And whereas Puss Lake Conservation Association receives grant funding from the township to dredge the lake for the benefit of the community, that they be requested to assist in establishing a public lake access. And whereas McClintock's has previously provided a lake access for watercraft for the public on their lands that has now been closed, the staff inquire with McClintock's if they are open to entering into an agreement with the township to provide public lake access.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Goyette, second by Councillor Spoulos. This is going to throw a wrench into it. Was the report not stating that we were going to do the columns now? The surveyor is going to go back and install them. So I believe now what we're saying is we're going to pause on that expenditure and wait till we get a little bit of design back from staff, with possibility of a little concrete pad with a bench. But also for me, I'm a little comfortable with pausing because we're near the end of the season already. You know, we got another month or so, and then we can get a more concrete idea of what's going on the GRCA lands. So I think that's the direction, right?
I think if we have with the first line in the resolution, just that we report back on the design options, it's understood by staff that we won't do any of that until we come back to council.
Okay. I really want that easement delineated, but with all the other balls in the air, I think it's okay to take a bit of a pause. So, all right, we had a mover and a seconder, right? Councillor Bailey, you raised your hand. Uh-oh, what did I do?
No, I just, I didn't hear any conversation on fencing. And I didn't know if that was an option that had been put on the table from staff, or wondered if they could comment on that.
My understanding in previous reports is that there's too many encroachments. There'd be a fence going through two people's decks, but I'll let maybe Ms. White Fox speak to it.
Yeah, and I think it was also just maintaining kind of the visual to the lake as well. The fence would maybe be something that would obstruct the view. So staff can include that if council wishes in our design options, but it hadn't been looked at just for that, just to maintain kind of that view of the lake for everybody that's visiting down there.
Okay, I just think, if I was living down there, some of my concerns might be, the worry of public coming onto property, and that might help, ease some of that worry in the area. So.
Yeah, okay. All right. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Spillis,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
Councillor Bomer.
In favor.
All right. Ms. White Fox, could you read the resolution for 9.32, please?
That report ADM 2022-046 entitled City of Cambridge Access Agreement be received, and that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the City of Cambridge Access Agreement either as presented or as amended.
You can move for that, please. Councillor Spillis, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Ms. White Fox, your report.
Thank you. So this was a collaborative effort between the Director of Public Works and the CAO and myself. It is regarding the Town Line Road transfer of ownership from the County of Wellington to the City of Cambridge. The township still maintains a 1 foot reserve just along the east side of the road for the section that was identified in the report. And this is just an agreement that's being proposed to council to deal with access permits that are being issued by the City of Cambridge on that section of road. And it just allows some collaboration between the two municipalities for when these access applications are presented. So the agreement is attached to the report, and the CAO and myself are here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Goida.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I think that this is a great agreement, and I'm in support.
Councillor Spillis.
Yes, I'm in support, and my only concern is other agreements we have with, say, the City of Guelph. If we're doing it here, we should mirror that elsewhere when the agreements come up.
Ms. White Fox.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Sapoulis. And so we will keep this wording in mind for when those do come for renewal.
Thank you.
Councillor Bailey.
I have no questions.
Councillor Bomer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I have to say something again. Just to help. So this is a very unusual situation where the township, this used to be a township road north of River Road, possibly even all the way down to 34. I can't remember how far it used to go. But this whole issue goes back to September 11th, 2001. The council today was reviewing plans from the City of Cambridge to expand the southerly portion of Town Line Road, which the authority had been given over to the City of Cambridge years before, and they're proposing to widen Town Line Road on both sides of the road, which was creating significant hardships for some of the residents on the township side. While we were looking at the drawings, the planes hit the Twin Towers in New York. That's why I can remember that day. Anyhow, having gone through that experience with the City of Cambridge wanting to widen their road on our side, not just on their side, made the residents very sensitive to this issue, particularly when this Highway 24 bypass was proposed for Galt, for Cambridge. And we're with one of the routes possibly stubbing onto the end of town, the south end of Town Line Road. So that created a lot of concern for the residents at the north end of Town Line Road, because of course, Town Line Road ends at Blackbridge Road, which reconnects with Highway 24. And there was a great deal of concern when the request from the city of Cambridge came for this section to be transferred to the city, that these residents would be facing the similar widenings on their side. And if you're familiar with part of Town Line Road, there's a number of houses that are very close to the road. And a lot of those houses have either wells or their septic systems in their front yards. And so this 1 foot road allowance was retained when the township relinquished ownership of the road, primarily to give the residents some comfort that the widening, if the city of Cambridge did want to widen on the township side, they wouldn't, the residents wouldn't have to deal individually with the city. The city would have to deal with the township first. And that would give the residents an opportunity to have better representation with their members of council rather than with the city of Cambridge. So that's how come this is unusual and unlike other boundary roads. My question that I have now is that now that we also have an entrance permit requirement and fee, this was put in place to protect the residents, from the widening. But now I'm concerned that in the event somebody wants a severance, this agreement suggests the township will now, we've agreed to apply the city's standards to get an entrance permit, an access permit across our 1 foot reserve. But my concern now is that those same residents might be subject to 2 access permit fees. Is there some way where we could address that if that access permit was not related to development, but because someone just wanted a second access to the property or an additional field entrance or something like that?
My understanding, and Ms. White Fox, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that the township will not be collecting a fee and the city as well. Given that the city is issuing the permit, it will just be their fee, not the township fee. Is that correct?
Yes, and then the township would be commenting if there was
Yes.
anything of note. Yep.
If that's the proposal, since we all know that now, but it's not written anywhere, would it be possible that we make sure that's written somewhere so that a resident in the future, a staff member in the future, doesn't end up double billing a resident for this? Because it is actually access across township property as well.
Yes, we'll make note of that.
Thank you so much.
All right, any further comments? Okay. Well, we have a mover and seconder, right, Mrs. White Fox? All in favor, Councilor Goida,
In favor.
Councilor Spoulos,
In favor.
Councilor Bailey,
In favor.
and Councilor Bowman.
Favor?
Thank you. All right, Ms. White Fox, you read the resolution for 9.3.3. Just get it on the table, please.
The report ADM 2022-047 entitled Roselle Pit Update be received for information.
Okay, a mover for that, please. Councilor Spoulos, seconded by Councilor Bailey. Who's presenting that? Ms. White Fox. Busy day.
So this is an update report just based on a council resolution that came, I believe, from the May 4th meeting. And we did receive some feedback both from the pit operator CBM and the GRCA, and those comments are included in the report as attachments. And staff is just looking for some direction from council as to next steps. I can confirm that CBM has taken some steps to arrange for a site visit at the Roselle pit and has extended the invitation to the GRCA, the ministry, and the township consultants at this point, which is tentatively scheduled for the end of August.
Ms. White Fox, when I read these reports, there was reviews, but the one from, I think it's OBS and Bud, doesn't matter. They put it in pretty plain language that there was a lot of missing components that they would need to formulate a conclusion. And then I believe we did see that report from CBM's consultant. So my question to you is, what outstanding items are there still that Hardin has or our peer reviewer? Because I feel that a lot of it might have been addressed, but there's still some pretty significant ones still outstanding.
I'd have to go back and just check with our consultants to see what exactly, like a detailed list of what they'd like to see. I wouldn't be able to provide that offhand today, but I also think that having this site visit is going to be extremely helpful to our consultants, and we may be provided just a summary at the end of that may answer some of those questions about what else they need to see to be able to really formulate that like a comprehensive response to what CBM to how their consultants are responding. So I think the site visit is a really good next step, and I think it's it shows some cooperation on all sides as well.
And sorry if you mentioned it already, the site visit, has that invitation been extended to Hardin?
Yes, so
Yes.
Hardin, our ecologist, the GRCA, the ministry, and then the HITS consultants, so Dance Environmental, I believe, as well. So it's going to be the group of them all attending together.
What's the time frame for that site visit?
The dates right now are the end of August into the beginning of September is what we're looking at. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, I think.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Guida.
Thanks. Yeah, this one is a tough one for me. It's as not a water expert, I mean, I don't understand exactly how this silt barrier works or doesn't work. But in reading Stan's report, it doesn't seem to me that Stan at this point is completely satisfied that that silt barrier is working properly. And that is, I think, for me, it's a concern. I find it disappointing that as a council, we have expressed on numerous occasions a concern, and the response sort of continues to be, everything is working fine. We haven't breached any thresholds. It's just climatic changes. But I mean, if there's other sites in the township that don't have the same type of response to these droughty conditions, I have difficulty understanding how this can be expected to be an acceptable response only here. I am glad to hear that there is a site visit that has been arranged, and I think that is a good start, but it's not just the wetland, it's the private ponds as well. And I think those property owners are left kind of holding the bag. And I think that they should be given the benefit of the doubt, and that they should be included in the work plan for the GRCA and Stan as well. I think they should be included in that. So I don't know if that's something that we can request, but I think that that's an important piece to the puzzle as well.
Mr. CAO, did this GRCA receive all the reports that we read in this agenda?
That's my understanding, yes.
And their conclusion that was sent was after they received these reports?
I believe so, yes. It appears that their comments are based on what they feel their regulatory role and in their regulatory responsibilities are. They're not really going to be commenting outside of where they have jurisdiction. But that's what it appears to be.
Okay, so the concerns with the wetland, the silt barrier not working and affecting the private ponds is outside their jurisdiction. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Sorry, I was speaking with regards to the pit operation itself. It could be argued that those matters that you just mentioned are within their jurisdiction. So we, at council's discretion, we could quite easily respond back to them and say that, hey, well, what about these specific issues? I think that the nature of the comments received were more general about the entire report that they had received. But if council still has some specific concerns about those specific items, I don't see any harm in pointing out those specific issues to them to say, well, we still have issues with these particular aspects. Could you give us your comments on these particular aspects of the issues and see what they say.
Okay. Councillor Spoulos.
Yes, I'm surprised at the GRCA response. I'll read it out. It says, "We will not be considering any other additional measures at this point as there is insufficient evidence to allow the termination of the recent reductions in water in the wetland can be attributed to direct link to the pit and associated activities." Well, we had Golder's report last time around, the sub-consultant to, I believe it's Earth Science, saying there seems to be something there, and they proposed some recommendations. In this batch of reports, their ecologists likewise indicated that there's 2 recommendations in there specifically dealing with meeting with the GRCA. So I think there is something there. With respect to the silt, the barrier, I think there is something there, as pointed out by our consultant, Hardin Environmental, and I would like to see that being passed back to the pit operator for a response. I'm encouraged by the fact that there seems to be their head honcho, David Hanratty, has indicated that they were pleased, they were glad to meet with our staff and their consultants, and I guess that's what our clerk has intimated is happening. So given that all that's happening, I have a question of staff. What are you, in your opinion, is the next step? Obviously the meeting, and after the meeting, what do you, in your opinion, should be the next step?
Ms. Whiteflex?
I think that we should request, a follow-up from the meeting, from our consultants. It looks like there is, Councillor Goyda has mentioned it, and it's in the report itself, that there is the offer to work directly with the GRCA on that plan, on that program as well. So I think that could be explored. But I think that if after the site visit takes place, perhaps we could request Hardin Environmental to attend a council meeting just to give council a summary report on that, and then to answer any direct questions, and then to formulate a plan directly with our consultant.
Is your understanding that at the site meeting is strictly the wetlands, or the silt barrier will be discussed as well?
We can certainly request that both are addressed. We can pass that along to David Hanratty as well as to our consultants to make sure that that's looked at the site meeting, so that it can be reported on.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I think that's important that both issues be addressed at the site by the experts, and I like our clerk's response that after that meeting we have our consultant brief us on what transpired and what he thinks should be the next steps.
Could we also ask CBM to contact the affected private landowners and see if they're willing to permit a site visit there as well, if their consultants deem it necessary? I don't know if they can get enough information from the other 2 locations, or if they need to go and see the low-level ponds. I'd like to see that at least put on their plate so they consider it. Comfortable with that, Councillor Spoulos, everybody? Can't see that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, that point you just made was one of mine. I wondered what sort of correspondence is happening with the pond owners. Like Councillor Goyda mentioned, like that is another real issue, and they shouldn't be left dealing with it on their own. I think it should be included in the bigger picture here of the wetland and the silt barrier. So I would hope that they would be included in at least a follow-up information session after this meeting has taken place, or including them in it somehow, whether it's a site visit or something. I think that's really important. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all my thing. It would echo what Councillor Sapoulis just said. I was concerned as well with the GRCA response and was just asking that we make sure that they have all the reports that they need. Yeah, I guess having this next meeting coming up is going to help answer a few questions, and I'm glad to hear that it's coming sooner than later. So I look forward to the follow-up with that.
Councillor Balmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, to help, if I were to sum up what I got out of this, it was our consultant, Hardin Environmental, acknowledges that, you know, the lack of precipitation last year had an effect, but it was made worse in this area because the hydraulic barrier is not working. And the operators consultants suggested response was, let's just keep digging until we finish taking all the gravel out and see what happens. Which, you know, if this becomes the operator's opinion, then I think we have to question, you know, any commitments that this operator makes regarding anything. Because I certainly don't think that let's just keep digging and see what happens is an appropriate way to deal with situations like this. However, hearing what I've heard from staff today about a meeting coming up with everybody on site, including the ministry, which is key, I think it means someone's heard us, which is good. So I don't fully despair that nothing is happening as a result of our interest in this. And I would just, you know, I'm willing to stand pat until we hear back from everybody after that site visit, including the ministry, because they're going to have what they come up with is going to be very significant. So thank you.
I have a question for you, Councillor Balmer. In the report, it mentions that I believe it was the peer reviewer, or doesn't matter, the consultant for the operator. There was damage from cows in a certain location that were leaving hoof prints. I know there was a program that the county ran to provide assistance, whether it's financial or trees, to make barriers for cattle around sensitive rivers. Does that ring a bell to you?
Yes, if you complete the environmental farm plan, the Rural Water Quality Program will fund installation of fencing to keep livestock out of buffer areas that are meant to buffer creeks, wetlands, rivers. It's a voluntary program. You have to, you know, a person has to be willing to do it. I did it. And then, yeah, you get partial funding for different projects that help protect the groundwater, surface water, those sorts of things. And you're right, it's a joint thing between GRCA and the county.
So what I don't understand is, are the cows coming onto CBM property, or are the monitoring locations on the farmer's property? Does anybody know?
It reads as if the monitoring is occurring on the neighbor's property, but I couldn't say for sure.
Yeah, I doubt staff would know for sure either. Is there any way to reach out to that property owner and let them know that these programs are in place and our concerns with the local environment? And is there any value in that? You think there's any value in that, being a farmer, Matthew?
There was for me, but as I say, that's an individual decision, but it doesn't hurt to make them aware of it, whether just by putting a flyer in their mailbox or speaking to the GRCA staff or county staff, whoever has the pertinent information, and mailing it to them, or having the operator make them aware of it. If it's, you know, the operator is truly interested in addressing this, they could have at any time offered to pay to fence the area off on behalf of that landowner as well.
So maybe in the future correspondence we send to the operator, CBM, we identify these programs if they're still running. So Ms. Whitebox, I guess you'd have to contact the county and request that CBM have discussions with the landowner to mitigate the damage caused by the cattle to help facilitate the recovery of the wetland. Put it on to them for now. Discussion through council on those comments. Councilor Goyda?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I wasn't aware of these programs, so maybe they aren't either.
They might have come to fruition. I know I've seen reports at the county where they're showing the results of them. And so I don't know if they've wound down, but at least
Mhm.
staff can look into it. And if they're not
Yeah.
available any longer, then this is
Yeah.
unfortunate. Councillor
Yeah,
Schools?
sounds good.
You might not have heard me. Councillor Schools?
Yeah, I'm fine with what you're suggesting, Samir, as Council Gordon mentioned. I wasn't aware of these programs, but it's really good information.
Councillor
To
Batesville?
the farmer be aware of this.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I think it would be great for someone to personally reach out to the homeowner, not just a flyer in the mailbox, but someone reaching out and explaining the situation and acknowledging where the monitors are. Maybe they don't know. I think any type of communication doesn't hurt.
Councillor Ballmer, do you need another comment? Oh. He doesn't know. Ms. White Fox, so what have you heard so far?
So we'll be confirming the site visit at the pit location. That includes the ministry, the GRCA, township consultants, and the aggregates consultants. That staff requests that both the salt barrier and the issues with the wetlands are addressed during the site visit. And that staff contact the private landowners in the area to request access to their properties if deemed necessary during the site visit. So again, those are the ones with the ponds that may be affected. And finally, that staff contact the county to confirm the location of the wetland monitors and reach out to the property owners to advise of the locations to prevent damage.
I think we wanted CBM to put it in CBM's wheelhouse.
Okay.
Send it to CBM saying here, so staff, ask the county if the programs are still running. If they are, then say to CBM, here are the county and GRCA programs that help prevent it. Would you be interested in contacting the landowner and taking part in these programs? I just don't want our staff or us managing this. I'd like the operator to manage it. And it gives them an opportunity to show some good faith and take this on. Councillor Schools?
Yes, I'd like to also add that the Hardin Environmental's recent report be forwarded to the pit operator for comment as well.
I like that. Any objections to that? Just nods.
No.
Councillor Palmer, you can just speak up if you have an objection. Okay. Anything you think oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Goyda.
I heard in there that staff be requested to contact private property owners in case they need to go on their site, but I didn't hear in the part where it talks about where they're having this meeting to look at the wetland, that they would also be looking at the private ponds. I just want to make sure that we are requesting that gets included in what they're assessing when they're on site. Is that
Yeah,
in there, or did I just miss it?
I feel you're right. It might have been worded differently, but the idea is we're asking CBM to ask the landlords for permission to have it included in their site
Okay.
visit for consideration. That's
Okay,
what I thought was the direction. Again, we don't need us contacting landowners and they get lost in transition, all in CBM's wheelhouse.
Yeah.
They look after it, but it's just our desire. Is that what you had captured, Ms. White Fox?
I
Or
can
you
just
do now?
update that. No, Councillor Gord is right. I had it that staff contact the private landowners to request access, but we can change that to have the pit operator contact the landowners and request that access during the site visit.
okay, and sorry, is it okay to speak?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you just reread the first section of that?
That council directs staff to confirm the site visit at the pit location that includes the ministry, the GRCA, township consultants, and the pit operator and consultants. The council directs staff to request that both the salt barrier and the wetland concerns are addressed during the site visit. And that staff requests that the pit operator contact the private landowners in the area to request access to their properties if deemed necessary during the site visit.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that in addition to the silt barrier and wetland concerns, it's also the private pond concerns that are being included.
Mhm.
Ms. White Fox, you said salt. but it's silt. I don't know if you just,
Sorry, you're right.
as long as it's not, as long as it doesn't say salt in what you have typed.
You're right. No, it's silt. I'm just reading it
Okay.
incorrectly.
All right, I might have you reread it one more time and then, sorry for all the reading.
Okay, so that report ADM 2022-047 entitled Roselle Pit update be received, and that council directs staff to confirm the site visit at the pit location that includes the ministry, the GRCA, the township consultants, and the pit operator consultants. And that council directs staff to request that both the silt barrier and the wetland concerns and the private pond concerns are addressed during the site visit. And that staff requests that the pit operator contact the private landowners in the area to request access to their properties if deemed necessary during the site visit. And that staff contact the county of Wellington to confirm if the wetland monitoring programs are still taking place and the locations of the monitors. And that the pit operator reach out directly to the landowners to advise them of the programs and the location of the monitors, and that the most recent Hardin report be forwarded to the pit operator for response.
Perfect. I had a mover for that if we didn't have one. I don't remember. We did. We had a mover for it. I put it on the table first. So as long as, who's the mover?
Councillor Sapoulis moved, Councillor Bailey seconded.
Are you two comfortable with the as amended?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Last go around. Councillor Goida?
I have no other comments and I'm in favor.
Okay, Councillor Spillis?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bailey?
I think I'm okay. I was just caught up in the fact that if there is a program available where the monitors are, that we would reach out to all those different property owners, not just the one that's been identified. Is that assumed?
I focused on the cows, but I mean, it's probably not a bad thing if there are some other mitigation programs, tree planting program, who knows? There's lots of, I think staff can just reach out to the county and through their conversations, but that's not a bad point. Okay. Councillor Bulmer?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just the wording regarding the program is a little lumpy there. It's, I think the request was for staff to reach out to Wellington County regarding the rural water quality program and the environmental farm plan program. The environmental farm program is the thing the farmer has to do before they qualify for the funding under the rural water quality program.
Can I back you up? We want CBM to reach out to the county.
Understood.
But we just want staff to make sure those programs are still up before they ask CBM to call to the county. So
exactly, but that's not what the resolution says. That's what I'm speaking about.
So can you repeat those two programs so Ms. Whitebox can capture them, please?
Yes, so I think we're asking the operator to reach out to Wellington County to determine if the environmental farm plan program and the rural water quality program are still operating. And
then
if so, make the adjacent landowners aware of this program.
Good. Yeah.
Cool.
Make sense?
Yep.
So, sorry, to clarify,
Yes,
are we asking? Sorry,
Right.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry
we
to confuse it. Sorry, I know there's some delay here on the internet. I'm sorry to confuse it, but what I'm trying to avoid is us asking CBM to inquire about a program that's been closed. So really all you need to do is call the county and say, hey, is the rural, whatever he just rhymed off, the rural water quality program, and what was the other one, Councillor Bulmer?
Environmental farm plan.
If they're still available, then we ask CBM. So I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to say, hey, go look at these programs. And then they get back to us and say, oh, by the way, they stopped funding that in 2015 or something. So it should be a pretty quick inquiry to the county. And once you can confirm they're still up and running, boom, we just ask CBM. Does that make more sense?
That's what we just said. That's what I proposed.
Does that make sense, Mr. Whitefox?
I have that. Sorry, I can turn my video off. Is that better?
Let's see. Let's try.
So what I've captured is that staff contact the county
My
and
internet.
Wellington. Oh. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
So I have that staff contact the county to confirm if the environmental farm plan program and the rural water quality program are still operating. And if so, request that the pit operator make the adjacent landowners aware of this program.
Did I capture it well enough, Councillor Bowman?
Makes sense.
It's a little tidier. I like it. Okay, on that little revision, any concerns? Just generally, see nothing. Last chance, Ms. White Fox, are you comfortable with what we've tried to express to you?
Yes, thank you.
Anything we've not addressed that should have? I'll take that as a no. All right, all in favor, Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Spoulos,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
Councillor Bowman.
In favor.
All right, Building Department, can I have Ms. White Fox read that resolution, please?
That report, building 2022-003 entitled Building Department Second Quarter Update for April to June 2022 be received for information.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spoulos, seconded by Councillor Goida. All right. Mr. CAO, sorry, for you, Andrew's not available today, so Mr. CAO is stepping in.
Yeah, sure. So this is for basically for council's information. I'll do my best to answer if you any specific questions you might have, but if I can't, we'll just have to report back to you.
All right,
Basically just an update for information.
okay. Councillor Goida,
I have no questions. Thank you.
Councillor Spoulos,
I have no questions, just an observation. It was interesting that during COVID, we had more construction than we have now after COVID.
yeah, and I noticed that we had less structures built too, which was concerning somewhat. Councillor Bailey,
I have no questions.
Councillor Balmer.
No question.
All right, all in favor, Councillor Goida,
Favor.
Councillor Spoulos,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
Councillor Balmer.
In favor.
All right, Ms. White Fox, 9.7.1. Resolution, please.
That report REC-2022-014 regarding facility rental concerns be received, and that a mandatory township staffing presence during weekend and statutory holiday rentals be implemented effective immediately at the Postage Community Center, and that an hourly fee be established effective immediately for full cost recovery associated with the position during weekend and statutory holiday rentals.
Awesome, mover, please. Councillor Balmer, you haven't moved much. You're moving this one. Councillor Balmer moved, seconded by
Yes.
Councillor Bailey.
Sure.
New partnership here, okay. Mr. CAO.
Okay, this is a joint report. A number of us were involved preparing this based on the increase in concerns that have become apparent lately. There's the report outlines what the concerns are. There was some of these concerns were identified previously, and council previously put some measures in place to try to address them. Unfortunately, the behavior is continuing or even increasing, so we felt it important to bring it to your attention just because of the implications finance-wise and operations-wise to the corporation. So there's a number of factors in there. I won't go through it. You've all read the report, and we're the majority of our team who worked on the report, or a few of us are here, and we'll do our best to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Mr. CAO. Councillor Goida.
Thank you. Yeah, this is disappointing to read this, but I do tend to agree that there should be a township staff member present during certain events, depending on the nature of the rental. At the same time, I feel that requiring a staff presence at every weekend and holiday booking is potentially penalizing good renters from our own community that aren't and haven't been causing problems. I am I'm wondering, we have the alcohol risk management policy, which we've just adopted recently. And I know that that serves a different purpose, but in that policy, we've used discretion in the policy regarding certain events requiring security and certain events not requiring security. And I'm wondering if, could we not apply the same discretion in terms of the staff presence and when we require that, and what types of events we would require that for, instead of just putting a blanket every event on weekends and holidays?
We could, but how we go about that and how we administer that, we need to make sure we set up some very specific protocols as to how that is. So maybe if, you know, you have, I don't know, pick a number, you know, five rentals without any issues or concerns, then, you know, moving forward, then, you know, we can waive that requirement. We could look at an option like that, yes.
Okay. I did have a question just about the staff. I guess my question is, do we, or could we have the staff resources to have a township employee at events booked on weekends and holidays? I'm asking that only from experience of being really difficult to find staff that are willing and able to work on weekends and holidays. And whether that would consist of existing staff or whether we're looking at bringing on new staff, and what happens when they call in sick or they're not available. And I don't know, I based on experience, I worry about putting that requirement in place and then not being able to fulfill that requirement.
We discussed this at length, and yes, it would not be an existing staff person, because then it would all be overtime because they're already working full hours during their normal work week. So this would be an additional staff complement, but it wouldn't be a cost to the municipality. It would just be through cost recovery. What we would do, and I know other municipalities have had similar postings up recently that we would model this closely after. A number of municipalities are moving in this direction. And typically what you would do is you would try to have 2 to 3 people as a roster kind of thing, so that if one person isn't available or calls in sick or it doesn't show up or something, you do have you know, someone else to fall back on. That's what the intent would be, and that's the approach that others are using.
By any chance, do you have an idea of what that cost would be? Like, what would the increased hourly rate be to the renter? How much more would they be paying? Do you have a sense of what that would be?
I believe the preliminary information that we had looked at, it was like the hourly rate for the individual would be somewhere in the range of $20 an hour, something like that. So then whatever the normal overhead administration would be on top of that, I don't know offhand, but so somewhere in that range. So it wouldn't be an exorbitant amount that goes on the renter, no.
Yeah, okay. And then just a question, sorry to ask so many questions about the staff person, but would that person then, so for example, one of the concerns is the capacity. So if that staff person would be there to potentially monitor that the capacity stays within the limits, but if it doesn't stay within the limit, is the expectation then that this staff person would kind of act as security and start asking people to leave and policing all that, or what would be, how would that work? I guess what role are we asking this person to fulfill when things don't go the way they're supposed to?
Based on my understanding, the approach that others have put in place, and we would model our approach similar to this, is the individual would say, like I'm just picking numbers here, say the capacity is 150, whatever it is. And if they're keeping track and looking at it, and then if it you know is obvious that it is approaching that or going over that number, as part of the rental agreement, there will be a contact on the site for who the renter is. So the staff person would then go approach that individual and say, okay, look at you're exceeding capacity here. This is beyond what was in the rental agreement. This is beyond rated fire capacity. You need to remove the exceedances right now, or the entire rental will need to be closed down. And then the process that's in place, you don't have this individual go and physically remove people. You just tell them that you have to remove them. And then if not, then the mechanism that you have in place is that then you notify that the rental has been terminated and they're officially trespassing, and then police would be contacted. But that's the stick that's in place legally that you would have to go through. Obviously, you hope to get to that location or to that situation, but we would make sure that that wording is specifically in the document, that they fully acknowledge that the capacity for this is limited to this, and if they exceed that, the rental would be terminated. So that's the process that's in place. There's just certain mechanisms that we have to go through, and that's the rules that we have to play under.
Okay. In the report, it talks about, it says, given the fact that there are options for cost recovery of excess damages when the renter is a member of the community, and this option does not exist for non-members, would it be worth considering only implementing the staff presence requirement for non-residents? I guess I don't know specifically what groups, and I don't necessarily need to know what groups potentially are causing issues. But if there is some kind of ability to recover costs from residents, and we don't have that ability from non-residents, as a way to continue to incentivize our own residents to use the facility, could we not have that requirement only for non-residents?
The challenge that we have is in terms of the options, what I was referring to in the report, this is not an item, just to clear that up, this is not an item that if we have additional costs that we can go put it on somebody's tax bill. That's not something we're allowed to do under legislation, which is fine. Okay. So what we're just simply saying is, in terms of options, is at least then if we know that it's a local individual, who they are, we can go and approach them, and we have an opportunity to have dialogue. We know where they are, we can have an interaction with them, and they might be known in the community, and there might be some type of relationship there. Mm-hmm. where that isn't available to someone coming externally, right? That's with respect to the options available. The concern with having a lot of variations in between what you have for local renters and non-local renters is that it doesn't take long then for external groups to simply have a local person make the booking to get the cheaper rates and to avoid certain requirements, and then we're still kind of in the same situation. And I know that that's been experienced in a number of municipalities too.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. But if ultimately the person who has signed the rental agreement or who is on the rental agreement is responsible, I would hope that there's some kind of that they would take some kind of accountability that way as well. But I have more questions, but I think I'll leave it at that for now and sort of see where the discussion goes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Skoulas.
Yes, I have a series of questions as well. Do we need to do both, have a township employee present as well as an increase in the surcharge rate?
No, I believe what we could do is, as long as there is still a surcharge, I think if we would maintain it at the current, I believe it's 25% right now. And we could leave it at the 25%. We do strongly recommend that stay there with the addition of the staff person.
Okay, next question relates to people causing damage and not being able to collect. When somebody comes in and files paperwork, can we not ask for a license or a photo ID card that has their address on it to say, I live here and so? And furthermore, can we not ask for them to provide a blank amount on a credit card? In other words, you'll only get charged for the place, for the rental place, but if you do any damage, we're gonna put it on a credit card. I know when we used to go and rent kayaks, I used to say, well, this is a rental rate, well, we want you to accept, sign off on this blank thing in case you wreck the kayak, you're gonna have to pay for it out of this, as part of this cost.
Yeah, I'll defer to Ms. Hassan on that in terms of the financial aspects and the fee collection.
So just holding credit card information like outside of our website, we don't currently do that because there are several security risks associated with that. However, we did look into whether our website was able to authorize a security deposit payment, which places a temporary hold on the funds without actually capturing them. So basically, if the renter had caused damages, the township would have the option to capture the authorized funds or a partial amount within a set period of time. And unfortunately, each bank is different in terms of how much time those funds can be held on for. We also discussed with our website provider, and they indicated that there would be a lot of custom development work required on our website in order to implement this. So we held off on that just because our past practice of collecting the security deposit check, we've been able to cash those in the past. Like we haven't had issues with cashing security deposit checks. And we also feel that the increase in the security deposit amount from $365 to $750, which was recently authorized by council, has also assisted us with some of the cost recovery associated with the security deposit. So just based on our research to date, the security deposit check practice is probably the best way that we should continue to implement this. We feel that the increase in the security deposit amount also really assists us in recovering these costs. And that was the case for this specific rental that was discussed in the report.
Okay, a specific rental that you discussed in the report says we were out of pocket roughly $700 after all said and done. So I'm looking at a way of recovering those costs by having some sort of mechanism that requires an individual to say, here's a blank signed off credit card slip for you to draw in case I cause damage.
Yeah, so we've looked, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mr. CAO.
I did look into this as well and had some discussions with others on it. And the challenge with that approach is that the experience that a number of organizations have had is that the card is maxed out or the card doesn't have enough room to go up there. So say they gave their deposit and then you took the credit number to pay for damages and you incurred damages, you try and recoup that from the card. There were no funds available on that card, so you couldn't get the funds. So that's why some organizations are taking the approach of giving the funds up front so that you have them in hand in case you actually do experience them, not hoping that they'll still have some credit left to for you to be able to access. That's a challenge that others have experienced from what I've been told.
Okay, so the other question I had was with respect to asking for a copy of a photo ID card. In other words, you're citing examples where somebody may say be not saying who they are, asking for a rental of the place. Meanwhile, this individual has caused damage before at a location or elsewhere in the county and is looking for another place to rent.
I can't really, we haven't really looked into that or what other municipalities do. Mr. Schwendinger, do you have anything to add? Or Sarah is also an attendee here and she assists with the rental processes, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the mechanisms that are in place or what authority the municipality has to then use that information to go collect funds. We would have to look into that and report back to council if that's something you're interested in.
Well, I'm interested in the sense that you don't want to be scammed by somebody who's already has a bad record. In other words, he's got to provide some sort of ID. This is who I really am. And you have the opportunity to check with other municipalities if this guy's caused damage. So that's something I'm suggesting as a way of filtering out these individuals who are causing problems elsewhere. Okay, that's basically all I got at this time.
Councillor Spruce, are you, this question line, are you trying to determine a way to impose a higher security fee on people out of town? So the question is, how does the staff, when somebody comes in to rent, determine if they're a Whistler resident? Do they ask for ID, or do they just take it on the honor system? Is that kind of the direction you're
No,
going?
I'm looking at weeding out the bad apples. As our CEO has pointed out, you may have somebody in a township fronting for somebody in the outside the township. If it's somebody in a township, well, it's quick. We can quickly figure that out. So he's got to give his address and his name. That's quickly discernible. Whereas somebody from out of town, you really don't have that option.
Gotcha. Okay, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Yeah, some of my thoughts when I was reading this report. I think continuing with the current resident, non-resident fee. From what I read, it started as a pilot project, which we haven't really had opportunity to collect enough data on. So I think that should just continue as is. I don't see raising the current fees at this time. And similarly, I think the new deposit amount of $750 is so new that I don't think we've had enough time to assess how it's impacted the rentals. So I would suggest keeping it at that. However, if there's appetite to increase it, I suggested it only be applied to the non-residents at this time, just because the report indicated that more than 70% of the renters are from out of town. So that would be the biggest impact to who is renting the facility. On that note, since there are 70% non-residents that rent it, I figure there's a really high chance that a lot of the renters have really little connection with the Puss Lynch Community Center. So I'm wondering if staff would be able to come up with some suggestions as to how we can improve this connectivity or the ownership of our community center. I'm sure there's a large correlation between being connected to a building and how it's respected or taken care of. So my thinking is if we can increase this connection to the community center, we may be able to reduce or mitigate some of the issues that are happening to it.
So can you just elaborate on that a little bit more, like what you mean? I don't know if council's completely understanding that.
Well, my example is the Badenoch Community Center. I mean, we rent it out. There are no issues. This report would not come forward from Badenoch Community Center because everyone has a story about it, has a connection to it. There's a personal connection. The person renting it shows up at the facility, chats with, in the past, it's been Florence Peer, who knows everyone in the community, and she's probably related to most of them somehow. So there's that initial personal connection, and it just makes people care about the facility, respect it, and want to keep it clean and tidy and in good condition. And so I'm seeing a disconnect with the Puss Lynch Community Center because 70% of the renters are not from the community. There's no connection there. That connection is lost. And if you're renting it over the phone with a staff person who also might not have a connection, then you've lost that personal link there, which I think is really important. So I'm just wondering if staff can come up with ways or look into ways where we can improve that connection.
Would that be like a service level thing, Glenn, when we review service levels? Maybe like she's discussing better signage or something where if it's Sealy family reunion at the Puss Lynch PC, there's signage, indicating who's renting it. So there's a little bit more accountability, but these things do you feel they have a better home under the service level reviews or through the budget process or something?
Yeah, we could look at that. We'd have to take a look at if you're going to be putting the renters' name there. Some renters might not want that, knowing there's privacy issues and all kinds of stuff. So we'd have to definitely take a look at that. I'm not sure we could comment on that. If that's something all of council is interested in, then yeah, we could look at that as part of the service level thing. Council could maybe note that in the comments they're going to be forwarding. It just, from a staff perspective, I'm wondering if, how do you do that? Like, how do you achieve what you know, Councillor Bailey is referring to? I understand what her intent is. I'm not sure how people are coming here because of the size of the facility, the ease of access, and the cheap rates compared to other places. So given that, how do you make somebody from, you know, for discussion, from Mississauga care or have a personal investment in the facility? I don't know how you achieve that, because it's being used more as a, yeah, it's being used more as a commercial facility, right? And that's the concern associated with some, you know, we'd be open to ideas of how we could do something like that, but I'm just not sure offhand how we would go about doing that.
So if I
Councillor
can, yeah, if I can comment, I love when you drive up Gordon into Guelph and it says, you know, welcome. Today or last week, it was Braeburn Farms, you know, was doing a golf tournament. And my comment on, if the renter doesn't want their name on the sign, then maybe those aren't the renters that we want in our community center. We want to have that connection. We want them to care that they're there. We want them to be proud that they're renting our community center. I don't know. So I think if you had some sort of sign that said, welcome Bailey family, then the Bailey family is going to care a little bit about taking care of the facility, because their name's now on this, you know, building. And if it's left a mess, they're going to know who did it. So I don't know. That was just something I had thought of, is some sort of signage, and it's written into the contract that your name is going to go on a sign. And if you don't like that, then maybe you can go somewhere else. Something else that I was going to ask about, in terms of the number of attendees allowed, I know we have a you know, a capacity based on fire standards, but what I'm hearing is that the community center is becoming more of a social facility. And I'm wondering if we lower our numbers on how many people that are allowed, so we might have the capacity for, I don't know what it is, 400, I don't know what it is, but we're only going to allow 250. You might deter those big groups that are causing the problems. And when you have smaller groups in, it's still the same rental cost. So you're not losing money. You're just attracting the groups that are lower in number that may not be causing all the problems. Because I just think problems come with bigger numbers, generally. Anyway. So those were just a couple comments. Councillor Goyda mentioned discretion built in to our alcohol risk management policy, and I would like to see the same discretion built in for a staff person. So based on, you know, like the example was, if it's a baby shower, we might not need a security person. Well, same thing if it's a craft sale on a Saturday evening, we probably don't need a staff person there. So I feel like staff could use a bit of discretion into when to need a staff person. And then we would have that consistency with the two policies. And I'll leave it.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I believe Sarah in the audience has her hand raised, and I'd like it if she could also be placed in, just so that she can provide her comments just from the rental perspective.
Sure, you can move her over, or Courtney can move her over, I guess. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to comment, sorry, on Sarah, your piece about capacity. I think the issue is more so that we're notified by some user groups what their capacity is going to be, and they notify us they're going to have 120 people, but because there is no staffing presence at the facility, 200 people show up. So it's oftentimes just we're not being notified of what the user group's intention is of the facility.
Okay. Anything further, Councillor Bailey?
Nope, I'm good, thanks.
Councillor Balmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would share some of the comments that I've heard already, especially regarding the discussion around mandatory staffing presence. The ARM did have laid out some pretty good guidance as to how that discretion would be used. So I have faith that our staff could develop a similar set of policies to guide how the discretion will be applied for a non-licensed event regarding this presence of staff. But I do understand exactly why they want to have them there. It's not that I don't understand that, because in many ways, it achieves what Councillor Bailey is talking about in terms of that connection. As someone who worked as a porter at a hotel, you know, we may have set up the room, we may have put up the signs acknowledging someone was there, but we also were there to welcome them, so they knew someone was there. And that in itself has both the positive effect that Councillor Bailey is looking for and the preventative effect that staff are looking for. So I can see the benefit of having staff there. And instead of making another option for the use of this mandatory staff for Saturdays and for weekends and statutory holidays, is the policy also suggests, you know, a barring of someone from renting, as does the ARM policy, that we've had a bad experience with. I think it could be used as an interim step for someone, perhaps a local resident, a resident renter that we have a problem before they're barred. It may be that's the sign that, okay, next time you will be required. Then it becomes a mandatory staff member when you've had a problem. But I think it was Councillor Goyda suggested that we don't want to be in a position where we're punishing the people who we haven't had an issue with, even if they're residents or non-residents. So I would certainly support having some discretion with regard to that staff. The other piece, let's see. There was a discussion, I'm a little confused. There was discussion in the report. One of the recommendations was that the security deposit be increased, but the answers we got back was that it no longer needs to be increased. So, do we know which one it is that it's going to be, that you'd like to have it increased, or we don't want it to be increased?
Excuse me. My understanding is that the concern is that experience has shown that even with the security deposit that we had in place in an unsupervised situation, that it wasn't in a sufficient amount. Given that council, from what I'm hearing, council seems to be fairly supportive of this undertaking. Building on just what you said, Councillor Bulmer, that if they see that someone there is present, then odds are, and you know, the hope is that the behavior resulting in this additional cost post rental from them wouldn't be there. So given that, I think what we could do, and kind of what the discussion was, that we haven't had a whole lot of time with this increased fee, so let's maybe try that, provided that we have a person there. And I think where we're trying to get at is if council isn't supportive of the person, then we definitely should increase that deposit amount. I think that's where we're at, and we're trying to seek some direction.
Excellent. That makes sense. So it's a sort of a conditional recommendation. If we don't support at least some form of staff presence for some rentals, we need an increased security. But if we can at least come up with something to reduce or mitigate or eliminate the bad situations, we're good as we are with the 25% surplus. We're good as we are with the current security. And okay, that makes me feel a whole lot more comfortable. So anyhow, that's it. My thing would be if we could use the mandatory staffing presence as a discretionary application, just to do with the ARM, and also use it as a step up before we ban somebody. You know, it'd be the first strike one, you have to pay for mandatory staff. Strike two, we don't rent to you again. That kind of system. So thank you.
If I could, I see your intent there, but I can also then hear I can suppose what our operations staff would be saying is, that council would have to be aware then that if you're trying to use this as a strike two thing, if they, we had problems in the first rental, we still have the consequences of that first rental to deal with, where we could have a rental one evening, there's all kinds of problems, we have to bring in all kinds of extra staff, take them off of other projects to get this facility up in condition for the next rental. So there could be some operational impacts if we're using that as a stick if someone doesn't behave properly the first time. I think whereas it was proposed that we put this in place, and then kind of from what I'm hearing from council is that if they develop, a good positive rental history, then maybe we can look at taking that off instead of the other way around. I think that's kind of where the discussion was. We're just concerned of the increase in frequency of what we're having, and when something does go wrong, it knocks over a bunch of dominoes for the subsequent rentals.
Understood. If I could, Mr. Chair, I understood. Thanks for the clarification. What I'm hearing there is the challenge with the weekends is the tight turnarounds between rentals. I hear that. What I hear differently from maybe what you mentioned there is that I would prefer that those that already have a good, I don't need to wait 5 rentals for someone to demonstrate their ability to have a good rental. I think we have several, probably have several resident, non-resident renters who have a good record already. And I think Councillor Goyder's point was, I don't want to subject them to this unnecessarily. If we have a group in the township that's rented it for years, why would we ask them all of a sudden to pay for this? Unless, maybe council is not aware. Maybe we've had a problem with a group that has rented it for years, and this is going to be needed. But taking your point about having a good record, I think that's what I would like to apply. Is let's just look at who has a good record, and they're not subject to it right away. New renters who we don't know and don't have a history, fine. But if we already have good renters and repeat renters, why make them subject to it? All of a sudden. That'd be my question.
Thank you. All right. So we have 70% of our renters that are from out of town. That's correct? Fair
Yes.
statement. Okay. We have 30% that this council has spent a lot of time discussing protecting our interests. Of that 30%, how many of them are actually required to provide a security deposit? I believe there are some that are exempt. Is that a fair statement? Like Whistle Stop, did the 30% include when Whistle Stop was operating, or is there opportunity for that 30% to not be, maybe required to produce some of these requests?
Mayor Sealy, all renters, including residents and non-residents, pay the security deposit. So
Okay.
including Whistle Stop and the Optimist.
Okay, so we have a issue that I feel staff need addressed immediately. 70% of the people are not our residents that are causing this concern. So I'm supportive of the increase in staff. I believe Mr. CAO said $20 an hour plus admin fee. What's typical rental, Ms. Heater? Is it from 8 till 2 in the morning, or is it from 6 till 2 in the morning? What's the hours?
The Coast Central Community Center on a Friday or Saturday on our prime rental days, rental groups have used the facility from 10 a.m. until 2 a.m. the following morning. Typically, those events are events that do begin in the late afternoon, early evening, and go into the evening, into the early mornings. The daytime would really typically be used for event setup. They're putting up their tables and chairs and decor and whatnot. Sundays, you can rent the whole day, but there is an option for hourly rentals as well.
Is the intent for this employee to be on scene from 10 a.m. or once most of the fest? No.
No, more for when their event is taking place. So if someone is having, we could use a wedding as an example, they notify us of usually when they're anticipating the event to start or their guests to arrive. So if that is, in the late afternoon, early evening, I think the thought is that, or the hope is that that staffing presence would be there for the event itself.
So we're maybe considering 6 to 8 hours at $20 an hour, $160 plus admin fee. What's the min fee? 10%, 20%?
I
I
would
don't
say maybe 15%, but I can get that.
You couldn't make it 10, so I could do the math. You had to make it 15, right? Thanks.
Sorry, it can be 10.
15, 5 is 8, is $24 on top of that. $184 increase. So just for rough math, what's the increase on the rental? What's our rental rate right now for the community center on a Friday? We're talking $180 a rental per person that rents our community center, which 70% of them are not from our community. And then I mentioned this, I remember eons ago when Ms. White Fox was actually sitting beside me. We were discussing damages at the PCC, probably early 2019. And I was asking for the security deposit to be increased because the security deposit increase, it gets refunded. So it penalizes the people that deserve to be penalized. And I get it's a bit of money. I would support increasing the security deposit to the amount that covers the example in the report. So it works out rough math, $1,500 security deposit. And that covers us for, and the staffer, and that affects 70% of our rentals, and then include maybe some wording in the policy that gives staff discretion to not mandate the staff or the township employee, because it is the Optimist or Whistle Stop or these that capture that 30%. So in Cole's note, I hear staff are asking for a solution for a problem that's 70% of our problem. Now, all these other discussions about creating I had this with Mr. CAO. I said, can we create like a record of renter, but that can't be implemented today. So if we don't implement something in the interim, put some language in there that gives staff the ability to give some leniency to the 30% that maybe are not causing our problems, then we're going to be incurring a bunch of costs for the remainder of the wedding season into the fall. So that's where I stand, is that we should increase the security deposit to the amount that would cover the example provided by staff, that the wording be modified, that staff gives, I don't know if it's called an exception, but the lenient, help me out here, staff can determine whether the additional presence of township representation is necessary. And that will, I would hope, Mr. CAO would fix or at least give you some tools to address the concern immediately. And then staff can come back with what they've heard about building. Essentially, it's a new policy, or it's amending the alcohol policy. I forget, ARP or whatever it's called.
It would be a new policy, because the alcohol policy doesn't apply to all rentals, right? So we would be developing a new policy, and we can incorporate some of the comments or the comments that we've received from council here today. But yeah, what you're saying, if we in the second part of the resolution, with discretion of staff, and we could use that in the interim until we get the wording in the policy that we bring forward to you in the future. I think that would work. Mary, do you think that's fine?
Yeah, and we'll report back on the exact wording in our 2023 user fees and charges bylaw, because it'll be noted as a new user fee or charge. And I think what I'm hearing is that it would be up to staff. But I've heard a lot about that it not being applied to. I guess I'll just work with this. We'll work with the CAO on just the proper wording in our user fees and charges bylaw.
I think the discussion that we've had when we were going through this, like you said, all of us work together on this, is we don't want to make it's difficult position to put our staff in when there's like Sarah and her team, to put them in a situation when there's so many multiple exemptions for certain situations, and it doesn't make it an easy, quick process to go about making a booking or a reservation, right? Because there's so many different exemptions and situations and conditions and all that kind of stuff. We can have some consistency there. It's good, but we'll try and strike that balance that the council's discussing here today.
Sorry, I don't know if it just went sideways a little bit. So what I was recommending was increasing the security deposit and implementing the report, essentially, other than giving some discretion. Mrs. Sam, were you just trying to recommend that all the monetary components be moved to the user fee and charges review in the fall?
We could place it in our user fees and charges bylaw, but it would be nice if we had the specific direction from council in this resolution so that we could implement it as part of user fees and charges as well.
But that deposit fee doesn't have to be part of the fees and charges bylaw, I don't believe, does it?
It is actually in the user fees and charges bylaw. The security deposit amount,
Mhm.
it's noted in the Post Lunch Community Center schedules.
So that has to be reviewed then? I mean, what we're hearing in this report is that there's an immediate concern. So do we have the ability to implement increasing the security deposit and providing, well, we can provide Mr. CAO the ability to request a township employee be present, not make it mandatory, but the staff can request it and include that in the costing of the rental. Can that
Yeah,
be
so
done?
yes, so effective immediately, if we have in the council resolution what the direction is to staff, we can implement some of these measures effective immediately, but we'll, as part of our user fees and charges bylaw, we'll update those schedules as well based on what council directs us today.
Right. So I would
Mr.
like to
Chair.
have, yeah, give me a second. You get to talk a lot longer than I do. I have to wait patiently for 5 people. So it's my turn, it's my turn. I would like council to take some consideration into implementing the majority of the recommendation, changing the wording so that it's not a mandatory, keeping in mind that it's 70% rentals from outside of this community. And then as well, part of the resolution that we dive deeper into this during the user fees and charges discussion, whenever that happens post-election. And because the costing, I don't think I ever got the full costing, but the increase is $180 per day. If staff determine it to be implemented, I think that's reasonable. It still makes the PCC quite attractive as a rental. And maybe I will remind, we just spent $100,000 on or more on a kitchen. If we recover a little bit more money, that'll help offset some of that costing, and it'll also help protect all those upgrades. So that's kind of what I'm suggesting, and I'll go around the table and then see what the thoughts are. Councillor Goyda.
Yeah, I think, our CAO has hit the nail on the head when he said the balance component. I guess that's what I was looking to achieve, is some balance here, but I do hear what you're saying, that the concern is immediate and it's 70% of the renters that we're seeing this concern with. So I can support increasing the deposit if that is, a mechanism for staff to recover some of these costs should they arise. And as you said, it's fully refundable if it's not an issue. So I could support the increase in deposit, even though we just did that recently. And I can support having the staff presence there. But I would like to see, as Councillor Bulmer outlined, and I don't know how it necessarily it needs to be worded in the resolution, but I would like to see that there is some discretion for renters that have been prior to now renting the facility without any issues, having the ability to not be required to have this staff presence there. So I don't know if we can just leave it at that as direction as to moving forward with that, but otherwise, I can appreciate what staff are trying to achieve here and what we're trying to protect. And I can support the increased deposit and everything else.
Okay. Councillor Spoulos.
Yes, I'd like to suggest that the second recommendation say, instead of mandatory, say that a discretionary township staffing presence, blah, blah, blah. In other words, it's discretionary. And have another motion that the deposit required be immediately raised to $1,500.
Yeah, it's moved. I need a seconder so we can discuss that.
I'll second.
Councillor Goyda, thank you. Back to you. New motion on the table.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Before I go, actually, I'm going to reverse. I'm going to go back to you, Councillor Spoulos. And can you just add into the bottom of that another clause that staff report back during the user fee and bylaw charges on proposals for. Glenn, what were we trying to address later? Whether this sticks or not, I don't know. Was there a component we needed to review at the user fee and charges? If we do
I
this,
believe that we just saying then that this be incorporated into the fees and charges bylaw for 2023.
Yes, but effective immediately, we will have these things implemented based on the council resolution.
what about the component of building a record with the township? Is that just something you can do internally, Mr. CAO, or does it need to be documented?
What we're going to do then is, given the council direction is this is going to be at discretion, what we're going to want to do is set up an internal policy or procedure that we follow. So it's very clear as to what the discretion is, because it's not always going to be the same person doing these things. So what we're going to do is document that out, and we can bring that forward to council as well. And we'll outline that in that document, just so that everyone's aware, and then the public is aware too, what the discretion is based on, not, you know, some personal choice or something like that. Here's the criteria for the discretion.
Okay. Councillor Goyda, you're okay with that?
Yes.
Councillor Schools?
Yes.
Okay, any comments from either one of you, since I kind of already went to you two?
No.
No. Okay, Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I have a question for Mary, and sorry if I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm just curious, how many of the rentals, and it's hard to know because of COVID, but in the last, say, 5 years, because we'll have to extend it, but how many rentals have cost the township money?
Sorry,
Are
I
we-
can't, I don't have that information on.
But
me.
are we talking like 50% of the rentals cost us money? Are we talking like 2%? Is it a small number that end up costing us, or is it a big problem?
So I'll interject. I think that would best be answered by Mr. Fowler, as he has most of the knowledge on that.
Okay, well, let me rephrase it then. How many deposits have been needed to be cashed, whether it's partial or in full? In the last
Do you know?
5 years?
I wouldn't say more than 10.
In the last 5 years?
Well, no, I would say on an annual basis. And sorry, my memory isn't serving me really well because the facility has been closed for so many years.
Yeah. So 10 a year. Out of how many rentals?
I can't say the exact number of rentals. Maybe Sarah would be able to speak to that further.
In a year, how many rentals?
But what I could say is, from speaking with Mr. Fowler, is there was plenty of instances where there was. Oh, you're not muted, Ms. Heater. I've never called her that before. Sorry. There was instances where there was damage, and even when prior to raising the security, staff didn't collect. They just absorbed it, but it became more repetitious to the point where then the report came to raise the deposit, and it just seems to be more common occurrence. So the historical data may not be there without having Mike there, because he would have just absorbed it through his staff, but maybe we need to start being more diligent on, say you have a $1,500 deposit, and you do $300 damage. Sometimes that would be $300 worth of person hours. That would be absorbed, but maybe going forward, we need to start being more diligent on it. But I don't know if that helps you, Councillor Bailey, but from my with them, it's been a regular occurrence.
Okay, because my concern is I don't want 1 or 2 rentals impacting everybody else, right? If a lot of people are doing a good job at renting, they shouldn't be penalized or have to put up all this money up front.
But they get the money back, and so one of the things they would get all the time is the old dishwasher. They wouldn't know how to operate it, and then they'd have to call a public works staff, and then technically I think we have to pay them 4 hours of time and a half. Where if you have a member there, then you alleviate these things, and then they're paying the cost of $120. So if they're good renters, if staff determines they need to have somebody there, it's a couple $100 and you get your deposit back. So that's just kind of where I'm at with it.
What
Yeah,
I could add to that, just to try and answer your question, Councillor Bailey, as well, is in discussing this with Mike when we were working on this report, the reason he's bringing this forward and when he raised the concern, he was extremely concerned when he brought this forward to me. It's not because of a one-off here. This is definitely a trend that he's seeing increase, and he wanted to bring it to council's attention before it gets out of hand, right? So this isn't a one or two of, it's more than that, and the frequency of it is increasing.
right. So my angle was not for not having staff. My angle was I don't agree with an increase in the security deposit. That's where I was coming from. I think we just increased the security deposit. We have not seen how it's impacted anything. We have not collected any data on it. It's 2 months old. I would imagine it's all new. So the motion on the table is to increase the security deposit. So I am not in favor of that, but I am in favor of staff being present when and if it's needed, using that little bit of discretion built in with the fee absorbed by the renter.
Mr. Sand, you're not needed either. Councillor Bummer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was a little surprised when just after hearing from staff that they're not recommending that the security deposit be increased, that now we're talking about increasing the security deposit, especially if they now have the ability to have staff on site. And thank you very much for introducing another reason why it's important to have staff on site, and one of the discretionary points that staff will have to use, and that is when we have a renter who doesn't know how to use the equipment at the facility. That's a very important reason to have somebody there. And as you pointed out, it's not a significant cost, especially if you've got a big rental. The cost can be spread out. But I, like Councillor Bailey, the staff are not recommending increase the security deposit. I'm familiar with when it was increased in the past. Rentals went elsewhere. But that's okay. I understand that some might have that interest, but since the staff are not recommending, if they have the mandatory staff presence, I don't see the need for it either. One question I would have, though, is we're talking about this as if it's going to apply tomorrow. But if just to clarify, whatever we decide today would only apply to any new contracts coming down the pipe, that not, or would it, are you intending to apply it to existing contracts that have been signed for this weekend?
It would be new contracts, new bookings starting whenever this is passed by council. We wouldn't be doing this retroactively. If someone already has something booked for this weekend, for example, it would not apply to that. It's from new bookings from this point forward.
Right, so it's going to be phased in over time as those new rentals come online. So I could support making it the staffing presence mandatory for the 70% non-residents and discretionary for residents, if you like, or even making it discretionary for all. But I couldn't support increasing the security deposit this time, since staff weren't requesting that. And as Councillor Bailey said, it's only been this level for a short period of time. Thank you.
Okay, so what we have on the floor is we have a resolution that states that staff have the discretion to require a staffing presence for the rentals, and that the security deposit be increased to $1,500. I was going to call a vote, John. Go ahead, Councillor.
I'm going to suggest we split it in two.
No, I was thinking of giving it a shot. Ms. Whitefox, what happens if this fails?
You lose everything.
Well, then the motion wouldn't be carried, but it may be best if you're wanting to just deal with the security deposit piece, if that looks like it's going to be something that's a bit contentious, like maybe dealing with that separately, and then we can look at the rest of the resolution.
So I'm aware that we can separate it. If we don't, then this motion is an amendment to the one presented by staff. Then we go back to the original one, correct?
So I think the way that it was posed by Counselor Sepoulis was that he made a motion that had two specific components. One, that the township staffing presence be discretionary, and the second component was the security deposit. So that's what I have included in Counselor Sepoulis's motion.
Right, but for procedural purposes, we had the original report on. Then his motion would supersede the one that was presented by staff. We vote on it. If it fails, then we go back to the original one and discuss it. Is that not correct?
Procedurally, we probably should have voted on the motion on the floor initially, and then we should have moved on to Counselor Sepoulis's motion. But right now, the motion on the floor is what Counselor Sepoulis has presented with the two components. So then, yes, if that is not carried, then we still have to receive the report, and we still have a recommendation from staff within the report to deal with.
Decisions. All right.
Councilor Goyette wants to speak, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry,
Councilor Goyette wants to say something.
I was just gonna separate it out, but I mean, go ahead, Councilor Goyette.
I was just wondering if there was any appetite for a friendly amendment to the motion that's on the table.
Certainly.
Is that okay, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
My amendment would be, given that the pilot, there's this pilot project going, perhaps not to take the increased deposit off the table entirely, but to give it some time as part of the pilot and report back on both those items.
Question of the amender. Councilor Goyette, are you suggesting that we go ahead with the increase and then report back on the outcome? Or are you suggesting we stay with what we have now and then report? And I
Yes.
guess, Councilor Goyette, I listened to what the mayor said, and then reported cites that there was an incident where the township basically had to eat $750. And I don't think that's fair for our residents to pick up that tab.
That's fair.
I'm gonna call the vote as Councilor Sepoulis initially put it forward, and then we'll just deal with the outcome. So all in favor of Councilor Sepoulis' recommendation. So what you're voting on is the change of from mandatory to discretionary for township staffing presence, and that the security deposit would be increased to $1,500. And I believe there's a third component about, was it implementing it immediately in the user fee and charges bylaw? And staff was going to develop an internal policy on that discretion. Is that correct, Mrs. Whitefox?
I don't have the piece about the policy, but I do have that the fee be effective for full cost recovery immediately.
Okay. All right. All in favor, Councilor Goyette,
In favor.
Councilor Sepoulis,
In favor.
Councilor Bailey,
I cannot support the increase.
Councilor Balmer,
Opposed.
and I'm in favor. That's carried. Okay, I need a break. Can we make it fairly quick? I believe there's only a couple extra components, so maybe a 15-minute break and we'll reconvene. So just before 1 o'clock, please.
Yep.
All right. All right, welcome back from our brief recess, and I'll do a roll call. Councilor Goyette,
Present.
Councilor Sepoulis,
Here.
Councilor Bailey,
Here,
and Councilor Balmer.
I'm here.
Excellent. All right, I believe the next item up is 10.1, the Mass Snyder Pit. That's a Hardin report, but I'm not sure. Do we have a staff member to speak to it at all? Mr. CEO?
Ms. Whitefox, did you have any comment on this one? I didn't have any comment on it.
It was, we received this low water level trigger and forwarded it along to Hardin for response. And so that's what's on the agenda today.
All right, well, it's open for discussion. Yes, Councilor Goida, you get to go first.
Thank you. Yeah, the calculations that are provided in the report that ACOM prepared and the methodology for the water level correction for a dry year, it seems to be this really complex calculation, and I'm not really clear why there needs to be a correction rather than just simply using the worst year as the threshold. I don't know. I have difficulty understanding why the proposed thresholds are lower than the historic lows. To me, the intent of a threshold is to ensure that it isn't being made worse than it was before. So these thresholds don't make much sense. But I think it's important to understand what these proposed thresholds represent in terms of actual water levels. So thinking of the Rosal pit, when the wetland goes completely dry and a threshold hasn't been breached, to me, that doesn't seem right. So I don't understand whether these proposed threshold level allow for a wetland to completely go dry without triggering. But maybe that's an overly simplified way of looking at this. And I think Stan has done a great job of using the correct terminology and language, but those would be the things that I would hope to have answered and corrected before these thresholds get put into place.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Spoulos.
Yes, I agree with Councilor Goida and her characterization of the consultant report. I'd like to move that this our hardened environmentalist report be sent to the pit operator for review and comment.
And got a seconder for that? Oh, you know what? I'll come back to you, John. Let me go around just so everybody can have their quick kick of this can. Councilor Bailey?
I would echo both of those. It looks to me like Stan also isn't quite in agreement with the threshold numbers and how they were calculated. And I think it should be sent on to, his report should be sent on to the pit operator as well for comment.
Okay, Councilor Bomer?
Yeah, I support I expect the resolution is going to say that we send this to the Ministry of Natural Resources and the operator. So I would support that.
Okay, back to you, Councilor Spoulos, for your resolution.
Yes, I'd like to move that the report prepared by Hardin Environmental dated July 28, 2022, regarding the Mass Snyder proposed thresholds be sent to the operator for comment, and that the copy of this resolution be sent to the MNRF for their information at this time.
So, Councilor Bailey, you second that?
Yep.
All in favor, Councilor Goida?
In favor.
Councilor Spoulos?
In favor.
Councilor Bailey?
In favor.
Councilor Bomer?
Friendly amendment.
Oh, shoot. It's already passed. Sure, give her.
Just, I would like that anything we send to the ministry indicate that we would object to establishing the levels as indicated by the suggested by the proponent. Right.
I agree with that.
I would suggest that we stay out of the technical part of it, because we as councils shouldn't be technically orientated. It should be our consultant that said this.
Understood. I'm thinking of the process. This was likely established. This process was set up so that when we got to this point in the operation, the municipality would have an opportunity to put their foot in the door, and just to, instead of just CCing the ministry.
Oh, okay, then I would suggest then what we say to the minute and amend the motion to say, and noting and copying the ministry, noting that we support the recommendations of our consultant.
That kind of thing, yeah, because this is one of those rare situations where this wasn't established at the beginning. Because to be fair, the concern when this pit was established was for flooding, high water levels at the north end, as opposed to, even though these had to be established now. That's why we just don't want to lose our opportunity to object if we can. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, I make a friendly amendment along those bases that the report may also be sent to the ministry, knowing that we support the recommendations contained in our consultant's report.
Okay. Councilor Bailey, you're comfortable seconding that?
Yep.
Okay. Any comments on that before I go around the table again? Anybody? Okay, in favor, Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Spools,
In favor?
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
Councillor Bomber.
In favor this time.
All right, carried. 10.2, Ms. White Fox, you have a resolution for that one?
The council received correspondence item 10.2, source water comments regarding capital paving permit to take water for information.
All right, can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spools, seconded by Councillor Goida.
Yeah.
Comments, anybody?
Nope.
All right, all in favor, Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Spools,
In favor?
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
and Councillor Bomber.
Favor.
All right, council reports. All right, well, we've received our notice of our delegation request for Whistlinch. I believe we're 0 for 2, right, Mr. CAO? We didn't get any.
correct.
Tamo, yeah, Tamo went 1 for 2. We got the new Minister of NDM NRF, which is Mr. Graydon Smith. Graydon or Grayson? Hope I didn't mess that up. It's recorded. Anyways, we'll figure it out by next weekend. And but what came through an email, I don't recall if you were copied on it or not. Hydro One was accepting delegations to them, so I jumped on it. I took liberty and requested a delegation. We received that, and Councillor Bailey and I are going to attend. And the basis for this was I've been looking at hydro costs in the township for a long time, but since I was elected and we're considered medium density, and that means your transmission rates are really high. So I initially had a thought of advocating province to change our density because we don't quite meet the criteria, and I forget what it is, but it's, you know, X amount of homes per square kilometer to meet the urban, but we're in a bit of a unique situation. Power escrow rate bias to Guelph or go to Cambridge. We have the industrial areas that use a lot of power. So, you know, we're at a spot as a township that I feel we should receive that different classification, which would reduce hydro bills for the residents. So I did some Googling, and then I discovered a program that Hydro One was implementing to go to fixed rate distribution. And the implementation of that, and then COVID hit and it got put on pause. So I've asked them to bring with them the power distribution graphs to the delegation so that we can take a look at it and ask them to explain the fixed rate and how it would affect us. I'm making an assumption that fixed rate would mean that people that were paying medium and low density distribution rates would pay less money, and people that in the urban centers would pay more. That's how they would balance it out. But I want that answer. So that's what we'll be discussing with Hydro One, and hopefully if that's accurate, that we advocate for them to implement this fixed rate program sooner rather than later. I think that's it. The only other thing I would say is that going forward for future AMO delegation requests, we should put some consideration into a Whistlinch staffer attending with me. Because we have these important meetings, you know, I'm focused on the conversation. I need someone there to, you know, capture what was discussed, any follow-up, and maybe, you know, Councilor Mr. CAO and I could discuss it. It might be a good opportunity for a junior member of the team to build their career, something along those lines. So that's what I'll, when I'm back, or if I'm back next year, I'm very hopeful to be back next year, that if we do this, I'll be asking council to endorse that, and as long as the Mr. CAO is supportive of it as well. I think that's all I had for mayor's updates. Any questions to me on that? No? Okay. Council member, oh, I guess we need a resolution. Ms. White Fox, the mayor update and the council member updates, are they captured in the same resolution?
Yep, the same resolution.
Okay. Okay. Anything from council members updates? Nothing. Sorry, Councilor Spools.
Yeah, just for information only, the Lake Erie Resource Protection Committee, the chair, Wendy Hassman, is leaving, retiring, and one of the members is taking her place on interim basis until one is appointed. And likewise, Martin Keller, who we've seen numerous times, he's also leaving. He's actually going over to Halton region, so that's interesting. So it'll be a manager position at that location. So I don't have a replacement for name for that person, for Martin yet.
Are you going to take that position, John? Either one of them?
No, absolutely not. I'm tired.
Right, okay. All right. Ms. Whitefox, resolution, please.
Council receives the mayor and council member updates for information.
And mover for that, please. Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Goida. All in favor? Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Spoulos,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
and Councillor Bowmer.
In favor.
Thank you. Bylaws, Ms. Whitefox.
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2022-035, being a bylaw to authorize the entering into a financial assistance agreement with Crape Company and Embers Holding under the Township of Plymouth Community Improvement Plan.
Mover for that, please.
I'll move.
Bowmer, seconded by Councillor Goida. All in favor? Councillor Goida,
Favor.
Councillor Spoulos,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
and Councillor Bowmer.
In favor.
Excellent. We don't have a closed session. Any business arising from the closed session? No. Notice of motion? No. New business? No. Announcements, anything from council?
I do.
Councillor Bailey?
Yes.
Councillor
Sorry, I
Bailey?
don't have it right in front of me, but we just received sort of a good announcement that VON, so Victoria Order of Nurses, they've been running fitness classes out of Duff's Church. I don't know, for the last number of years, but they have just increased the number of days that they will be hosting these fitness classes. So now it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning. So there's 3 different days. And it's mostly geared towards seniors, but it's free fitness classes out of Duff's Church. So that's pretty exciting that is available to our residents. And they just need to contact Victoria Order of Nurses to get registered for that. And I just wanted to plug again, the Badenoch Community Center is having their in-person barbecue on August 20th, starts at 4 o'clock. So if any council members want to attend, any staff that maybe have not been out to the community center, I would encourage them to contact me for some tickets and hope to see them on the 20th.
Excellent, thank you. Anything else from council? I have one. The UTM U19 women's softball team based out of Morston, they won their Division II championship. I don't recall where it was held. And if you recall, their coach came and delegated to council years ago about upgrading the washrooms and getting them open for them and stuff. So it was that team. So, so just a little shout out to them for being Division II champs and being based out of Old Morston here. So, we need a resolution to receive those, Ms. Whitefox.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, go ahead.
Should we send a congratulatory letter from you to them?
Oh, that'd be an excellent idea. Maybe Ms. Whitefox or Mr. Schwindeyer could draft one of those up for me. Be fantastic. Pretty proud of them. Well, obviously, because of where I live, we hear them practicing and they play some pretty decent ball. It's pretty cool. All right, I think we're on to conformatory bylaw. Right, Ms. Whitefox?
Yes. That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2022-036, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the Township of Plymouth at its meeting held on the 10th day of August, 2022.
Excellent. I got a move for that. Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Goida.
Yep.
All in favor, Counselor Goida,
In favor.
Counselor Spoulos,
In favor.
Counselor Bailey,
In favor.
and Counselor Bowman.
In favor.
And if you're first at the council meeting, you're always second when we're near the end, because then it just keeps on rolling. And adjournment, Ms. White Fox.
The council hereby adjourns at 1:14 PM.
I move.
And seconded by Counselor Goida.
Yeah.
All in favor, Counselor Goida,
In favor.
Counselor Spoulos,
In favor.
Counselor Bailey,
In favor.
and Counselor Bowman.
In favor.
Okay, have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, chief.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.